Good morning. I will call the meeting of the Washoe Board of County Commissioners for February 12th, 2019 to order. And we will start with a salute to the flag. Ms. Herman, would you lead us this morning?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Von Hartung, Chair.
Present.
Bob Lucy, Vice Chair, is absent this morning. Marcia Burke Bigler. Here. Kitty Jung.
Present.
Jeannie Herman.
Here.
County Manager John Slaughter.
Present.
Assistant District Attorney Paul Liparelli.
Here.
I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment of silence to recognize a couple of people who have recently passed. Commissioner Lucy sadly is not here today because he's attending his grandmother's funeral, who was Barbara Darlene Lucy, Darlene, and then a dear friend of the community recently passed away, a good friend of Washoe County School District, of just doing things right, was Mr. Michael Cate. And Mike passed away this last week through an unfortunate accident. So if we could, I'd like to take just a moment of silence. Thank you so much. Before we get started, I'd like to say just one thing, and that is I'm going to start today's meeting with something that's very important and very dear to me. Freedom is fragile and is not free. Generations of Americans have tenaciously fought for our right to be free. So I'd like to start our meeting by thanking active military service women and men, all veterans for their service, and the people who have really helped us out, all of that group that makes our country what it is. I'd like to also thank all first responders for making our communities a safer place to work, to live, and to go to school, and of course to play. And of course, all the volunteers that make Washoe County a better place for us all. So thank you so much. Madam Clerk, we will go to public comment.
Mr. Chair?
Sir.
Prior to going public comment, perhaps I should make a couple announcements about the agenda today.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Manager.
There are two items that are being requested to be moved up earlier on the agenda. The first is item 7, which is the Wild Creek, is commonly known as the Wild Creek item. My understanding is that the board will open this item. My recommendation, because we don't have a full board today because of Mr. Lucy's absence, my recommendation is going to be, after hearing the public comment, that item be moved for action to the next meeting. Public comment will be heard at that meeting as well. Okay. But I just wanted to make sure the public knew that, and I would recommend we move that item up on the agenda to be first after public comment today. And then item 6, which is our Animal Services Board, Advisory Board item. There are a number of individuals listed as applicants. Many of them are here and would like to provide their 3 minutes, and so to accommodate them, perhaps we could move that item up after item 7 on the agenda.
The only thing that I think I'd like to do is take item 4 right after public comment, if that suits the board. Okay? All right. Madam Clerk, item number 3, open public comment.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll read that item and then the clerk will call the names.
Thank you.
This is item 3, public comment. Comment heard on this item is limited to 3 minutes per person, may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Commission will also hear public comment during individual action items, with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And forgive my foibles. Madam Clerk.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. First up is Miss Hillary Burson, followed by Tammy Holtstill.
Welcome, Ms. Burson.
Good morning. Hi, Jeannie. I spoke with you on the phone last year. Your, Mr. Chairman, I believe is how I speak to you. Your thing about us being free just floored me, especially after you all voted, well, except for maybe one, voted to put us back into servitude to a company you know as Waste Management. I know them as Wealthy Mafia. Over almost 40 years ago when we bought our property out, Rancho Haven, everything out there was dirt. Red Rock Road was dirt. We used to haul our own trash. And then Wealthy Mafia came in and wanted our money. And your predecessor said, sure, and handed it to them on a silver platter. Well, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the weather the last month or so, but we've got this white stuff out there. And when it melts, it makes the roads muddy, the dirt roads muddy. Well, Wealthy Mafia will not come up and get our trash. My husband is a 100% disabled Vietnam vet. I just got out of hospital this last Wednesday with a heart condition. We have something that's supposed to be called yard side service. Well, that yard side service built up for 4 weeks before they got out. Now, you use the health department obscure laws to force us to have this service. And you put a couple of mom and pop businesses out of business that were doing a good service up there in the North Valleys. And when we call Wealthy Mafia, we get sent to Phoenix. What the heck does Phoenix know about 4 feet of snow on dirt roads? I have called Doug and I have called Frank and left messages. Evidently, they have a problem dialing their phones because I never get called back. Now, we know that the big truck is not going to make it up our driveway. And don't get me wrong, we love our driver. He is one of the sweetest people walking the planet. We just don't like his bosses. And we're not the only ones that are having problems out there. They'll come up and they'll pick up the ones they select to go up the road. But those of us, and I'm not the only one on our circle, that has supposed to have yard side service. We're going to have to put another trash can out, and they're not going to be able to get up on Wednesday to pick up our trash. They have these things called pickup trucks that they have sent out before to pick up our trash. We need them to come and get our trash.
Thank you, Ms. Burson. Ms. Thomas, would you follow up with Ms. Burson?
Thank you. I didn't mean to yell, but you guys forced us to have that horrible entity, so you have a problem. If they don't get out, you should.
Thank you, Ms. Burson.
Ms. Tammy Holtstill, followed by Ms. Darlene Hesse. And we'll need the overhead, please.
Welcome, Ms. Holtstill.
Good morning, Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee for the record. In an interview, Washoe County was quoted as saying they're spending $70,000 a month to maintain HESCO barriers. This is just past Nectar, right in front of Red Pine where the residents are being flooded out again. And it's because of the pumping that you guys are doing that is helping them not be flooded. But 70,000 and then this kind of issue happens? We wouldn't be in this position if, when Mr. Jeter had spoken to you all, besides me speaking to you, we talked about evaporation. This was brought up at your last meeting. There is an email right there from Mr. Jeter to not only Commissioner Herman, but also to Commissioner Lucy. And it was quoted that it couldn't be done because of money. That's all we've heard all along, is this water can't go away because of money. And then it wants to change and say it's not because of money. Here is the information that has been put out there, and there's no movement from Washoe County. I understand that you think that the city of Reno is at fault for the water that is in that lake, or I shouldn't say it's water, it's poison, it's effluent. But there comes a point that you need to take the lead and look at the different things and get buy-in and work with the other governments to get something done. I'm going between the two, and City of Reno seems to be listening to me at the moment. Why aren't they listening to you? Because you guys don't want to listen to them and work together. And to top it off, I went over your brand new bump for the pipe that we paid twice now for. First, we paid for it to go in, then we had to pay for it to be removed this summer when it shouldn't have been removed. Now it's back across Lemon Drive, and you know what? There's going to be a lawsuit because the way that it was put in this time, and I hope staff is listening, there is no ramping to it. Somebody with a short wheelbase and a lower car is going to bottom out on it because it goes boop, 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 and it is going to be an accident waiting to happen because of the shoddy work, because it's being forced instead of being taken care of properly. If you hadn't been moving all this water around, that pump wouldn't have to be there. If you had taken care of evaporating the water, taken care of doing something about the situation, you wouldn't be putting that pump there. You need to start doing your jobs. The water is still there and climbing, and it is all of your responsibility to take care of it instead of saying, oh, we have to let it evaporate.
Thank you, Ms. Oldstill.
Ms. Darlene Hesse, followed by Mr. Mark Brierly.
Welcome, Ms. Hesse.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Darlene Hesse, and I'm a resident of the Wild Creek Golf Course. And I tell you, we're going to lose a treasure that the Washoe County people paid $32 million for, and it's being sold like it's an unbelievable price for. I'm not exactly sure how much it is an acre that's being sold by, but I know that my husband and we paid $15,000 for our acreage in 1977, and I don't think it's even anywhere going to be sold for that. But anyway, it's just a shame. It shouldn't be happening. It's not a good place for a school. I think schools are the most important things in my life. I think it's so important to have really good schools. But I do not believe in wasting people's tax money. I know that there's a better way to do this. Washoe County is really going to lose a moneymaker. You know, that's probably the only one that's making money. I cannot believe it. And now that they have Duncan as a management company, they're just doing wonderful. There's so many people there in 2018. I see the new sign up, talks about we're open 2019. I don't know whatever happened to the sign 2018 because there's been a lot of people. And I understand that they've made over $1 million. And that's in a short time. And the place is beautiful. There's beautiful animals there. They've been there. I played on that land as a little girl. I was raised in Sparks, born in Reno. And this is such a treasure to lose. I tell you, it breaks my heart to see that people do not see the problems here. The traffic, we sit and watch the traffic every morning. It's bumper to bumper. You're going to bring in 2,000 kids to go to this high school. It's going to be standstill traffic. I say this over and over again. You're making a very big mistake to let this happen. It's a moneymaker. It's a beautiful property. It should be, if it's not a golf course, it should be left for a park. It's a gorgeous area, and we're just going to lose such a precious, precious thing. It's just not right. And I tell you, I just wish all of you people would look into, would all get together and go down and stand on the corner and watch the traffic. And, you know, they've approved all these things, but when did they go, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to look at the traffic, to see the traffic conditions? It's bumper to bumper. It's just unbelievable. It's just going to be a standstill traffic, and when the flooding comes, and right now, the golf course, all of the lakes are full. And when we get some more rain, it's always running down the golf course. It's a floodplain. It should never be built on. And in Dallas, Texas, they said people should heed the warning. Do not build on floodplains. And that's exactly what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hesse.
Mr. Mark Braley, followed by Mr. John Hesse.
Welcome, Mr. Braley.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm also with the Save Wild Creek group. I live close to the golf course. I used to be an engineer with the city of Sparks, and I was part of those that were instrumental in getting Wild Creek Golf Course put together. We're glad that you postponed this agenda item. I'm here just to say a few things you should think about. In looking at the agenda, it looked like there's $979,000 from the school district going to RSCBA. I surmise this is so the Convention Authority can redeem those water bonds with the city of Sparks. This is one thing I'm in favor of if this school goes in. The next is the value. I looked at the appraisal. It showed some similar type properties that are in the valley. I understand that two different governmental agencies can transfer property at less than a fair market value. However, in considering this, years ago, Joe Conforti sold this land for $3,500 an acre, and the appreciation certainly hasn't gone up that much as far as the sale amount. Similar properties in the county range anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 an acre. One thing that's kind of a fallacy in this whole process, school district's going to be buying this property at a very reasonable price, plus the water rights also reasonable. Washington County School District's going to pay more money for moving the power line than they are for the property and the water. One thing that you probably know about is Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission is considering adding new requirements for projects of regional significance. They're including schools in this. Hopefully they look at this project. I think you got the cart before the horse. The school district's not going to need this property till at least early winter. I would ask that you postpone the transfer of the property at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brierly.
Mr. John Hesse, followed by Ms. Kathleen Shoup.
Welcome, Mr. Hesse. Nice to see you again.
Nice to be seen at my age. Thank you very much, Bon. Yeah. Boy, 79. I never thought that. Anyway, thank you very much for letting me speak. I'm speaking as opposed to putting the school in a Wild Creek golf course. My wife, Darlene, speaks from the heart, and I'm not quite as kind as she is, but anyway, she's 60 years of marriage. She's a wonderful lady, so thanks, Darlene. Anyway, back to business. When I look at the idea of taking an existing property, I thought, well, I don't know, maybe it's a good place to go with it. You know, Hug is looking pretty bad, and then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, gee, they spent millions. I understand like $32 million when this golf course was first put in. And I don't play that much, but I do play a little bit of golf. And then I'm thinking, well, if they take this golf course and turn it into a high school, or even part of it, and we've already lost several golf courses, and with more people coming into the area that are going to be playing golf, to build another one, I thought, well, gee, this isn't right. It doesn't make any sense to me. We've got so much land that appears to be just as suitable, if not more suitable, than the Wild Creek Golf Course. So from a traffic problem, McCarran, El Rancho, Sullivan, all county roads. It just seemed like it'd be not the place to put it. Also, I'm in the insurance business, and I'm looking at some of these floodplain issues, and you can always mitigate them. I mean, if you throw enough money at anything, you can take care of practically anything. But I'm just afraid that by the time they take this land, they try to move the power lines, try to make bigger roads, take care of the flooding, that this high school is just going to cost just more than what the taxpayers, including myself, would want to pay for. And I think that schools, boy, that's the way we got to go. And I'm not at all opposed to high schools, but I just believe that Wild Creek is the wrong place to put this high school. And I wish that they would do some more studies. I know they have done some. They've paid for them, and I'm kind of not sure. I don't wish I had the money to put a study up myself. I'd pay for it and see if my study was the same as theirs, but I don't know. Anyway, I just want you to take another look at it. And I sure hope that it does get turned down. I hope the school district decides to build a high school, but not on the Wild Creek Golf Course. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse.
Ms. Kathleen Shoup, followed by Mr. Jeff Church.
Welcome, Ms. Shoup.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathryn Shep, and I also live around Wild Creek Golf Course. My property is right on the edge of the golf course. I am blessed. I realize that I'm very blessed to be able to look out over that green space and look at all those wonderful animals. I particularly like the badgers. They're just really funny to watch. There's are a lot of raptors that live on that property and on mine as well. I don't want to see any of that damaged. The school district is planning to take out the center of the golf course and perhaps leave the ends for possible golfing. I don't believe that that will ever happen. I don't believe that they are truthful in anything that they've been saying, and that they are not being truthful about that in particular. For one thing, property that's on the edge is usually neglected. And just maybe it's just me and my habits, but the edges of my property are not in as proper order as that's in the center and viewed frequently. And I don't know how the water setup is. I don't know if they would be able to maintain any green space or any habitats for the critters. Thank you.
Ms. Shoup.
Mr. Jeff Church, followed by Ms. Susan Ambrose. And Mr. Church gave me some documents, which I will distribute to the board.
And I have a handout.
Welcome, Mr. Church.
Morning, folks. My name is Jeff Church. I run a website, renotaxrevolt.com. I invite you to take a look. I'm here today to talk about the Reno Business Improvement District, which is run by a 501c6 advocacy group. So why am I here at Washoe County to talk about a Reno Business Improvement District? Because almost exactly 1 year ago, the county voted to self-tax themselves to support the district. They also voted, they actually issued a vote in favor of forming the district. Well, who pays this money? I do, the taxpayer. Everybody from Gerlach to Incline now has to subsidize the Downtown Business Improvement District. But wait, there's more. The tax creates a special liability for the taxpayer in the county. We are subject to special assessments, and we are subject to bonding, all because you voted to include yourselves in the special assessment district. But wait, there's even more. This occurred February of 2018. In June of 2018, a major U.S. Supreme Court decision came out, and in fact, there were two. One called Janus, J-A-N-U-S, the other one called Fleck. And according to those U.S. Supreme Court cases, You, as a county, cannot force me as a taxpayer to belong to a 501c6 advocacy group. Now, the analogy I like to use is putting the toothpaste back in the tube. If this gets too far downstream and this is overturned at court hearings, how are we going to get that toothpaste back in the tube? There are people that claim they refuse to pay the tax. Their property can be seized by the county assessor, sold at auction, and then if that's overturned in the courts, what are you going to do for them? So please, I want you to ask your attorney to review Fleck and Janus as it refers to the 501c6 advocacy group. And I want one very, very important point. Business Improvement District. The vast majority of the property in the Business Improvement District are not businesses. They have no common business interest as defined by IRS regulations. They are condo owners, the Montage, the Palladio. Why are they forced to belong to a Business Improvement District? There's churches, they are taxing churches. Not me, personally, but Sam got that. But they are taxing churches. So again, this is very important. We need to address it. We need to get a legal opinion, but so we don't have to put that toothpaste back in the tube. Again, please review those court decisions, and I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you looking for that, and I appreciate your kind comments on veterans, as I am one, and on first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Church.
Mr. Sam DeNeige, followed by Mr. Wesley Griffin.
Welcome, Mr. DeNeige.
Sam, DeNeige, that's me, the heart and soul and the body and mind of Reno government. Air Force Academy graduate, spent many years flying fighters and bombers, defending our nation. I've been to more government meetings than all of the citizens, at least podiums, than all of the citizens in this room. And this is not a castigation, this is a fact. I love all you guys. You support me. That's great. At any rate, I'm far beyond disappointed about this Wild Creek billion-dollar boondoggle pork barrel for the developers. I'm adamantly against it. Right off the, and I'm going to talk about it later on when it gets on the agenda, but I do want to say it's illegal for the RSCVA to sell that. The RSCVA was created to do things for the citizens, not build schools. And that Wild Creek Golf Course and all the golf courses and other things are what the RSCA was created for, to do things for the citizens. And this is adamantly against it. Jackhammer program, and then drive by shouting for the rest of their lives. At any rate, I want to give kudos to the governor for following Sam's directive and deciding not to, so I've been told by the airport, deciding not to change the name of the airport. I've come to these podiums saying, do not change the name. It should be the Reno Airport. If they change it to the Sam DeNeige International Airport. That's the only other name there should be. Nice smiley face over there. The governor, and it's true. It's not funny, it's true. And the governor has taken my directive and he's decided not to change the name. That saves $5 million. I did that all by myself. Do I get credit for it? No. You know why? Because we've got the worst, corrupt, perverted, media wacko freak traitors in the nation. The Reno Gazette. They've got some reporters who actually know how to write fairly well, but they don't know how to tell the truth. The truth that you're hearing right now. That won't be in the newspaper. They're scared to death of this 160-pound warrior. Secondly, I also want to tell the governor, now that he does one thing smart, the next thing he should do is appoint Sam DeNeige to this pot board, this marijuana board he's creating. I'm the guy who brought marijuana to Reno. At least I speeded it up. And I don't use marijuana, but I know a lot about it, and I should be on that board. So do what you should do. Finally, not finally because I'm out of time, but the Reno is having an election over there, a special election for somebody who just quit the job, and, well, he left the job. And by far, they've got 130 people applying for it, and all of them added together. Nice people do not have my credentials. There should be an acclamation appointment of Sam DeNeige to the city council. But no, they're going through a dog and pony show. Does anybody understand what I said? I want to thank you and you and all of the support you always give me.
Thank you, Mr. DeNeige.
Mr. Wesley Griffin, followed by Ms. Susan Ambrose.
Welcome, Mr.
Well, some of
Griffin.
my colleagues, I'm Wes Griffin, I'm with Save Wild Creek, and some of my colleagues said, that's a hard act to follow. So bear with me. As you know, we are very much opposed to a high school going in on Wild Creek. We have any number of reasons. I'm sure you've heard them enough to where you have them probably memorized. We have traffic issues, big issue. It's a floodplain. The cost of the school is going to be much greater than we as taxpayers ought to have to pay for a school. It's, according to our attorney, we had filed a lawsuit, as you well know, and according to our attorney, the fact that they're putting a school there is actually against the Washoe County, the Truckee Meadows regional plan. And when our attorney first discussed this with us, I said, well, so what? He says, well, in his opinion, in his legal opinion, the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency and the regional plan carry the full force of the law. As you know, we filed a lawsuit. That lawsuit was dismissed. A lot of people think that it was just dismissed because of the issues. However, it was dismissed primarily because the judge said that the suit was not ripe. Once the property changes hands, should we file another suit? Well, then the suit is ripe. We could, you know, it is something that would have to be looked at. We would rather not do that. You know, we would rather see that not happen. One thing that I feel like could very much influence us would be to see what the Regional Planning Commission says about this situation. As you know, I'm sure it's common knowledge now that Duncan Golf has taken over the golf course and they're making a profit. Word on the street is 6 months and they've got $600,000 profit. Does it make sense to take a profitable park like that, that's a treasure to our community, and put a school in when there's lots of other places a school could go? So I would encourage you to put off making the decision to transfer the property until we hear what the regional plan has to say. It's going to influence our opinion, and regardless of whether the property changes hands or not, we could still file another suit. Hope that we don't have to, but we would like to see this really given the proper attention that it needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Ms. Susan Ambrose, followed by Ms. Pam Roberts.
Welcome, Ms. Ambrose.
Hello. I just wanted to thank all the commissioners for initiating a discussion at your last month's meeting with the, where you were doing your workshop. And when the discussion came out of the public comment from other Citizens Advisory Board members, as myself representing Warm Springs Rural CAB, that both Mr. Slaughter and yourselves did initiate a discussion as to whether there could be some possible changes to the existing format of the CABs. And I wanted to say that we, with the Warm Springs Community Task Force, have successfully used community surveys and have gotten very good responses, and I know Washoe County has as well. And perhaps that's something that you could ask in a community survey as to what the citizens would like in terms of community input to continue with the CABs, or to have public forums, as Ms. Jung mentioned, or have even, Verdi, I believe, has a town council where those type of things can be discussed. Obviously, having community input into development proposals such as the individuals behind me is paramount, and that should not change. That's a very important part of the process. But as we heard from our first speaker, there are other things. For example, the waste management issues within your own area. And really, there's no place in the Citizens Advisory Board to hear that because it's not a development proposal. So I'd like you to keep those things in mind, and also keep in mind that keep the funding for our first responders commensurate with the growth in the area. We need to keep the jail well-funded and staffed with additional personnel as it's growing population, unfortunately, because of the increase in crime. But we also need to help our firefighters make sure they stay safe with increased funding, and also our sheriff's office. They need additional personnel as well. So thank you very much for commending the veterans and the first responders, but we'd like to make sure that they stay safe on the jobs they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrose.
Ms. Pam Roberts.
Welcome,
Good
Ms.
morning,
Roberts.
Chairman Hartung and members of the commission. My name is Pam Roberts. I'm a resident of the Palomino Valley area. My concerns are about process. There's an item agenda that I will also be speaking to, item 17. And at that time, I'll speak more specific to the development agreement. But my concerns are about the process for the Warm Springs area plan and the specific plan area we often call SPA. The SPA was initially approved by this body in 1992. It was amended to include a financial plan in 1995. The most recent review of the Warm Springs area plan was in 2012, and it failed to address in any way, really, the SPA. It didn't review it, it didn't update it. The specific plan area, the Warm Springs specific plan area, contemplated a complete build-out of 1,741 homes by 2017. We are now here 27 years later, and there are about 70 homes in the SPA, and about 30 of those homes were developer-built. This commission voted to remove the financing plan portion of the SPA, which was designed to collect and ensure funding for infrastructure in the SPA. I have provided public comment previously regarding my concerns about removing this provision without a replacement plan, and it leaves the SPA community, including myself, because I live inside the specific plan area, vulnerable to ad hoc growth by developers. Page 40 of the SPA document states that parcel maps must be reviewed by the CAB, which is Citizens Advisory Board. The developed parcel map review that's on agenda item 18 or 17 was not reviewed by the CAB. I believe that this body needs to direct staff to work with our community. I happen to also be a member of the Warm Springs Community Task Force, which is not a public body subject to open meeting laws, but we are trying to be as transparent as we can. Thanks to Susan Ambrose and Sharon Korn, there's actually a website for us, and we're trying to get information to our community. We would like the commission to direct staff to work with our community to update the Warm Springs area plan, the specific plan area, and the Warm Springs specific plan has a development standards handbook framework that is referred to, and I'll refer more specifically to in item 17, where developers are supposed to comply with that. That document was adopted in 1992. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That
I have-
concludes our people signed in under item number 3, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Forgive me. I have no one else on my list either. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before I close public comment? Okay, I will close public comment and move on to item number 4. Mr. Manager.
Item 4 is Commissioner County Manager's announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Okay, Commissioner Burke Bigler, I have you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. So I just want to give a shout out to our staff who are moving snow in our recent snowstorms and our upcoming snowstorms, which I think start again tomorrow. And they've done a bang-up job. It's a mess out there, and they've been working 12 hours a day, every day, and I really appreciate everything they've done, so I just wanted to give a shout out to them. I also attended the EDON business meeting for showing 2019 planned and future growth of the community, and it was interesting, very exciting if you like growth, not so exciting if you don't like growth, because it's talking about major growth. And I was, Commissioner Hartung and Commissioner Jung, I started to say Lucy, but he wasn't there. Commissioner Jung also attended, and it was really a very, very good meeting, and I know that they'll both have some things to say about it also. But I think what it points out to us is that this community is continuing to grow. Yes, nationally, I think we're seeing a bit of a stabilization of the crazy growth we've been seeing, and things are stable, but all the projections from all the experts are that's not really going to impact us as far as growth is concerned. We're bringing in all kinds of new high-tech businesses, small light manufacturing, which are mechanical, put cars together, if you will, by mechanics, and I don't know what they call it. I'm going to leave that to Commissioner Jung because I know she knows all of that stuff and she'll talk about that. But it's very fascinating what's going on. So I encourage you to go online to EDON and take a look at what is being proposed and what's out there, and that's the kind of information and feedback we'd like to see from you guys also. I also took the opportunity to tour Lemon Valley, as I indicated that I would, and I did tour it before the last storm. And at that point in time, I was with Chair Hartung and with staff, and at that point in time, the water had not breached anywhere, but we knew it was getting close, and this last storm clearly puts us in a position of having to be a little more concerned about things. But we did take the opportunity at the time to attend and do a tour of Lemon Valley Elementary School, which turned out to be a very positive surprise for us. So I had asked for some statistics, and their attendance there is 97%. Their absentee rate is very, very, very low, less than about 3.5%, something like that, 3%. So clearly it's not a sick building. We did go around and look in the bathrooms to make sure there was no black mold anywhere underneath the sinks. All of that was clear. There is an area that has to have, that clearly has asbestos up in it. It's in the library. It's about, 15 feet up, wouldn't you think, at least that high? And I got a commitment from them, I think we all got a commitment from them, not to let any kids climb ladders and scratch on that stuff, so it's okay. But there is an RFP out to have that removed this summer, so that is being removed this summer. The school's in great shape. The principal's fabulous. They're really doing some good stuff, and I think they're going to continue to do some good stuff. So I hope that you'll all get an opportunity to see what is happening the next time they do an open house out there. Additionally, I wanted to just talk for just a minute, and then, Mr. Chair, I'm done, about the downtown business district. That the fee that is paying for the operation of the downtown business district is not applied to anyone who lives or has property outside of the footprint of the downtown business district. So people who are living in Gerlach, people who are living in Arrow Creek, people who are living in Incline Village are not paying that fee. That fee is only paid by properties located within that particular district. So I want to make sure that that information gets clear to our citizens. I think it's important to put it on our television record so that it doesn't leave the impression that this commission approved a fee by any other name is still coming out of the citizens' pockets, and that we approved a across-the-board fee that everybody would pay in order for the city of Reno to run the downtown business district. And I think the district is doing really well, so I just wanted to make sure we got that on the record, and that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke Bigler. Commissioner Herman, have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't know, but I'll remind everybody right now. In regards to the flooding in Lemon Valley and the possibility for us to do something out there to eliminate a little bit of the grief, FEMA will still pay for elevations of homes. And it's worked really well in the southeast and hurricane areas. And that's, fixes a real temporary thing, but ours is long lasting and we really need to do something. They won't pay for buyouts.
So that's just a little bit of information. So I just suggest that maybe we bring that back and work on that somewhat. I think the people deserve that. And I think that's all I'm going to say at this time. So I'll give the floor to somebody else.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Burke, Bigler, another round?
Yeah, just one last thing I forgot. One last thing I forgot about the tour of Lemon Valley. One of the things that staff is working on, and they've hired a consultant, is a summary, a survey, basically, of what do we do? I mean, that was a question that several of us asked at the work session. What do we do if this water doesn't go away? If the report is that we're going to get more water when it certainly seems like we're going to do that, what do we do? And so there is a study, and our staff has hired a consultant, as I said, to do a study. We hope to have that sometime later this year, probably not by summer, but I'm looking at Dave Solera out there, and he's not telling me I'm wrong, so I'm thinking it's sometime towards the end of summer, but we will hopefully have some idea of what are some of the things that we can do to mitigate the problem with the water and so that it doesn't continue on into the future. So I just had forgotten that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jung?
Thank you. Yesterday, I had the grand event to watch Ms. Howe's 57th presentation on the new Opportunity Campus in Sparks, which is our formal Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services campus. And the excitement and the credibility was palatable in the room. I didn't go along for the tour because the snow was rather high, and we probably need to get better snow plowing in those parking lots, considering we're going to have citizens in those parking lots. And I'm sure that is just another level of snow plowing that is necessary in the Truckee Meadows. Sorry, Mr. Solaro. I loved your email teaching us about how snow plowing works. I think we got that last night. I think that'd be a great thing to get out to citizens with citizen engagement. You want that type of service? Guess what? You have to pay for it, or it has to come from someplace else. So I loved it. I think it was a great refresher of how every time we are shifting our priorities and changing a budget that's completely flat to advance somebody's special project in their area, when they don't pay for it, is we keep chasing our tail back and forth. This is what you pay for, this is what you get. And not asking people to invest more in their community when they want that level of services. But go back to the Regional Behavioral Health Board. I will be keeping a sharp eye on that. We were created by the legislature to give recommendation for potential bill draft requests that were going in. Obviously, there was no fiscal note allowed with that. So I hope this is not just an exercise in futility in terms of we knowing that behavioral health is the biggest indicator of where we spend the most of our social services dollars. And behavioral health includes both mental health and addiction services. Instead of just looking at psychological health, we now put that all into one group, or just look at addiction to create programs that allow human beings to give their best to communities and live out their best selves, which I think is what we're all here for. In terms of the EDON state of the economy, I think the biggest takeaway was affordable housing is our biggest issue in this community. It is considered to only get worse if we do not start having a plan for a worst case scenario. And the biggest area that we are finding people to slip and fall is not the lowest in poverty and not the people that obviously have lots of money. It's the missing middle class that is unable to pursue a lifestyle that they believe fits with their credentials and background. For instance, in Denver, Colorado, teachers there, which you know are on strike, have to do side gigs to afford to live in the communities in which they teach. And that is not sustainable, and it's certainly not a community I want to live in, which only the rich can afford to live there. So we as a community, county, region have to really start looking at that missing middle where there are no resources for anybody. You make too much money to get any sort of programming or funding. We also are feeling that from the area of when we are addressing behavioral health issues. People are graduated, they're ready to leave their program. We have no place to send them because we can't afford the rents that are being demanded today in this capitalistic environment. Ms. Roz is here, and I know she was listening very intently on the school in Lemon Valley. I got to let you know, I have reached out to Trustee Angie Taylor, who's a great friend of mine. She used to be the vice president and the president of the board. She has been traveling extensively. She has a gig that is what pays her rent. And when we get together, I'd like to do a tour with you and her, so you can show me sort of some of your issues. I have not been to the school. I'm not sure what the issues are or if they're there, but let's accelerate them if they are a problem. I think it's great what Commissioner Burke Bigler said. If they have that type of attendance and participation, that school could teach a lot of other schools in other areas of the school district on how to have parents who are responsible of getting their young children to school every single day. You don't have an excuse, you have to go to school every day. That's what I was taught. Otherwise, you take a sick day, you sit in your room, no books, no TV, no nothing. Guess how much I was sick? Never. Too boring to stay home, right? And then finally, back to the Lemon Valley flooding issue. I would like to start working on all options on the board, how much they cost, and also how much have we spent thusly. I know we're about at $5 to $7 million mark of what we have spent, and a small pittance of that will be reimbursed by the feds. So that's your tax dollars we used out there. And I think we should show some options and prices and land, and maybe it is elevate them. I'm not sure anymore. I got an email from staff giving me kind of a high level, and I've asked the manager, I do need a subject matter expert to sit down with me with the numbers and what exactly we're trying to achieve there, because this issue is, not only is it expensive, it is getting egregiously boring. And I don't mean to disrespect at all, but it's all we ever hear about, it's all we ever talk about. And I'm not seeing some real solutions that we have been given from staff to give to the public and say, you pick, what do you think is the best way out of here? And so we can explain to the rest of the taxpayers, this is what we've done, this is what they don't want to do, and where do you think we should go from here? So I am looking forward to that, especially this next budget cycle, to work with all of the commissioners to figure out some workarounds with that. And I think that needs to be put to bed and solved for forever, and whatever that means for people's destiny that they get to create themselves who are affected by this flooding. Beyond that, I didn't look ahead of what my schedule entails for the next week, but I will be diligently working to solve problems. I'm mostly invested right now, so if you want to call or have any suggestions, the budget, and looking at where we are prioritizing our budget. I will tell you, I got a report from staff just to look at variance, because we do have staff, which is a hard game, to predict how much we're going to take in and to predict how much our expenses will be. And there's not a lot, our staff is so good at the prediction capability, which they've been since I got here in 2007. We were the first to predict the recession, even though I argued with them the whole way, and they were right. We have such little variance, that's not an area in which we can find some extra cash. So that should make you happy, that we don't, say be so tight with our money, and then we end up with this giant percentage of money left over and people not getting their needs met. Our variance is very small, and that needs to be brought up, how good that our finance staff is. I think we do have the best finance staff, probably in the whole state. Clark County, we can't compare because they have more money than anybody, so they're not in the game that we're in with revenues. But any ideas from anybody, please let me know, any special projects, because I'm looking to, and from commissioners too, I'm looking to start being a lot more active in our budget and getting what each of us commissioners need in each of our districts, because I am feeling that we haven't taken that role, and I want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Anything from anyone else? Okay, my turn. As it happens, I've asked staff to put together a matrix of all of the options, possible options, regardless of cost, in a table, and maybe it's a piece of one, maybe it's a piece of another with respect to Lemon Valley. So I'm looking for, I've already asked staff to do that, so that we have basically, Commissioner Jung, and you've pushed on these dashboards, a dashboard where we can look at it and say, okay, these are the things that we've done, these are the things that are possible, and let's just see which ones will work and how we can come up with some solutions. So I have asked staff for that already. I was also in attendance at the EDON luncheon. What I took away also, Commissioner Jung, was not just affordable housing, but the number of jobs that we're adding per year. We're adding about 10,000 jobs per year right now, which is far above the national average. I mean, EDON is really knocking it out of the park. So, I mean, they are coming, and so it's going to be an issue. It already is an issue, of course. I also had an opportunity to attend something that was really fun. Out in Spanish Springs, they called it Spanish Springs back in the day, and it had to do with the Lazy 5 Regional Park, which is now a regional park, but used to be a gun club. When I first moved to the Valley 32 years ago, that was an active gun club. And it was kind of a center in our community, and there was also a number of other things that went on in the valley that we no longer see. There was a pig farm out there, and there was all this agricultural out there. It was really a very, very different place, and a lot of people shared some wonderful memories. People like Gasperi, Opio, Capurro, Aractable, Kiley, Wingfield, the Donovans, Harris, Patterson, Tucker, Stead. I mean, it was really a wonderful evening talking about the history in Spanish Springs. So it was a lot of fun. And they asked me to participate because I've lived in that valley for 32 years. I mean, I remember when Pyramid Highway was 2 lanes and the gun club was still active. And it was a different place, very agricultural. So I had a great time with that and listening to all the stories. I also like to mention this morning, I was asked to be part of the opening of the Nevada Preparedness Summit, and that is many of the volunteers who are first responders, those people who are out making a difference in our community when we see disasters that come. And so I wanted to give them a thanks. There was probably there was still a whole bunch of people sort of milling around in the very beginning, but there was easily a couple hundred people, and my guess is there's probably more like 300 people were in attendance. So it was wonderful. I mean, that's all I can say. And that's all I have. Anyone else? Commissioner Herman, Commissioner Burke, Bigler, Commissioner Jung? Anything get shaken loose? All right. I will close item number 4. Mr. Manager.
At this point in time, I believe we wanted to move to item 7
Yes.
on the agenda.
Yes.
And so item 7 is recommendation to adopt a resolution approving a cooperative agreement between Washoe County, the Washoe County School District, and the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority for the transfer of portions of Wild Creek Golf Course on Sullivan Lane in Sparks, Nevada, comprising the parcels of parcel map number 5369 and the rights and obligations related to those parcels, including personal property, water rights, rights to an effluent agreement, rights to a golf management agreement, and a ditch maintenance agreement, and matters properly related thereto.
Okay. So, Mr. Manager, I believe what we're going to do is we'll open up public comment, but we are going to move this to a later date, to February 19th, I believe. So that we have a full commission in attendance and we can have the conversation with the full commission. So with that said, I will open up public comment. Madam Clerk.
We have one speaker signed in on item number 7, Sam DeNeige.
Mr. DeNeige, welcome again.
Thank you. Sam DeNeige, the heart and soul and the body and mind of Reno government, and the gunny sergeant for the last 25 years teaching these people how to overcome adversity, and a rare compliment now and then. At any rate, what we have today is this, I call it, and it is, $1 billion pork barrel corporate welfare boondoggle where they want to, and the bureaucrats and the developers want to spend $200 million of our taxes to build a $40 million high school. Now, is that the definition of insanity? Now, they've postponed it. They're postponing it for a week, and I'm hoping during that week some sanity and honor will prevail over the developers' greed. Overcome the developers' greed, because that's what this is all about. The developers funding this thing, funding their campaigns, not this thing, get me wrong, funding those people up there and the other bureaucrats so that they will vote, so the developers can continue to make more and more money. It's just, I mean, I'm almost speechless. Now, what do you think of that? Not. At any rate, there's too many reasons not to do this. I need 3 hours to even start. Number one, it's the wrong place. It's the wrong place. And it's wrong, it's against the law. It's against the law for the RSCVA to sell this property, because the RSCVA was created to do things for the citizens. Getting rid of a golf course is not doing things for the citizens, and it does not include even building schools. I'm not against building a different place, hug high, moving it somewhere else, but having it at the Wild Creek Golf Course, the Jackhammer program, these poor citizens, 1,000 homes over there being basically destroyed in their value, their lifestyle. 3 years of jackhammering, and then the rest of their lives having to put up with drive-by shouting. Thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? Nice smiley face. Anyway, I could go on and on. She was talking about the budget thing coming up here. This would save $100 million if you just move it to one of these vacant lots around here. There's lots of them around. That would save a lot of money, $100 million. That would be, and then there's this little thing here called the effluent. So on the side there, the effluent. Right now, we are building a $100 million pipeline for the billionaires over there in Trick, and they want our effluent water. It's lower down scale, but this is going to be part of that effluent water we're going to be giving them, or even selling them at a discount. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. And thank you for your support that I get all the time. Thank you, and you, and thank you.
Madam Clerk.
That's all the public comment I had signed in on agenda item number 7.
Okay, this is the Wild Creek issue. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before I close this? Okay, so what we are going to do is, Mr. Liparelli, do we need to take a vote?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend the board act by motion to continue the hearing on this item to the specific date mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Liparelli. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we move item number 7 relating to the Wild Creek Golf Course to February 19th, when we will have a full commission.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion by Commissioner Burke Bigler, second by Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Jung is out of the room. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously with Commissioner Jung being out of the room. Mr. Manager, I think we're going now to move to item number 6.
Yes, item 6, this is a recommendation to select and appoint one member to the Washoe County Regional Animal Services Advisory Board to fill the vacant position specified in Washoe County Code 55.0361B. A real estate or business professional with knowledge or experience related to homeowners associations, business organizations, and/or financial operations, with a term to expire on June 30, 2021. Applicants include Lauren Acosta, Jeremy Altop, Gia Aragon, Spencer Campbell, Judith Cook, Dan Davis, Patricia Denny, Rita Groh, Lee Hooker, Norman Huckle, Patricia Faber-Johnson, Alfred Nepper, Brett McLean, Albert Rogers, Cheryl Sedestrom, Timothy Stoffel, Julie Warden, Brett Webster, and Catherine Wild. And please forgive me on the names if I mispronounced anyone's name.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So, Board, here's what I'd like to do. And I don't have terribly many signed in for public comment, so if you are on the list and want to make public comment, or if you're not on the list and want to make public comment, you're welcome to. It makes no difference. But what we'd like to do first is open public comment and hear from everyone, and then we will move to what my suggestion is, and tell me if this is tenable with you. I'd like for each of us to choose two. We'll narrow it down and see how, because we may end up with, we may know who it is by just choosing two. Okay? Does that work for the board? All right. Madam Clerk, public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First signed up under agenda item 6 is Alfred Nepper, and then he will be followed by Norman Huckle.
Mr. Chairman and
Welcome, Mr.
members of the commission, I'm a little self-conscious coming up here and tooting my own horn because that's what I'm here for. The applications we did and so forth didn't quite expand upon my background and expertise, if you want to call it that. The position requires real estate business knowledge, homeowners association, etc. I have experience in every one of those areas. I was a member of a homeowners association for 30 years. I'm a graduate of high school in '66, so you know how old I am. In those years, I have been in management positions virtually all my life. I was selected to attend the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, didn't go there for various reasons. I was a second person in the history of the Air Force to score 100% on their qualifying test, et cetera. I ended up going to the University of Arizona under a National Merit Scholarship. I was a National Merit Scholar, excuse me, in Arizona. I was raised on a farm. I have a very high regard for animals and love my animals. We had a BLM donkey for 14 years, or 18 years, I'm sorry, until she finally passed away. Anyway, during the time I've been in Reno-Sparks area for 40 years, I was moved here in 1978, was hired as the Human Resource Director for a bank that is now Bank of America and U.S. Bank split, was bought and split. Anyway, at that time, I was on many different boards, like the State Personnel Commission for the state of Nevada. I was the finalist for the State Director of Personnel with Richard Bryan when he was elected in 1983. Sometime when you have time, I'll tell you why I didn't take the job. But I was selected to be State Director of Personnel. I turned it down. Anyway, after that, I hired myself to be a trust administrator with the bank, and in that position, I handled, this seems impossible but for this area, but it was, in today's dollars, $1.4 billion in retirement fund investments. I was the administrator and director of that department, and some of my clients were Washoe Medical Center, which is now renowned, Jonasquaga's Nugget, Model Dairy, Scalari's, on and on and on, many, many doctors and dentists, et cetera. In those accounts, we had a lot of real estate owned by those different retirement funds. It's similar to PERS, by the way. And so I have much experience in buying and selling real estate. Boy, that was too quick.
3 minutes goes very quick. So please,
Sorry.
please just take a moment and summarize your thoughts. For
Okay,
us.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. After I left the bank, I became a special education teacher because I wanted to give something back. Financially, I was able to. During that time, I was on many different committees again, like the Washoe County Student Safety Committee. I was a board member there. The PTA Advisory Board for the school district, I was on that board, et cetera, et cetera. I have many different experiences in boards and commissions. I'm currently president and secretary-treasurer of a corporation that's involved with aviation. Been a private pilot for 40
Quickly.
years. And so anyway, I'm sorry.
No.
I should have come up and done 6 minutes with doing both, but I didn't want to take that much time. But
Thank you.
thank you. Please consider me.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Mr. Norman Huckle, and I apologize in advance for the name you're going to see typed on the screen. We had a little problem with the way that was entered.
Oh, goodness sakes. It's okay.
Mr.
I'm
Huckle,
used to
welcome.
errors. I should have asked for the overhead. I had no idea how it works, but
Can we
I'm
get
just
the
going to show you
overhead?
some pictures. All right, just a sample. I'm Norman Huckle. I retired from the University of Reno, and I worked there 32 years, so I'm very well aware of state, local, and problems that go up and down. We're very fortunate that at this time to have a very good economy that's booming, so I appreciate it. But we always know it's going to be, there's always something that's going to change at the end. 32 years, my last 17 were at the School of Medicine. I was in charge of interlibrary loan document delivery. I saw a lot of research on animal therapy, which I just love. And I realized the competition for this position is real tight. The man before me, wow. I also lived in Cullen Ranch for 10 years. I was active in the HOA there, and I also specifically in the Cullen Creek HOA. I don't live there anymore, but I was there up till about 5 years ago. So I know HOAs have been through the ups and downs just the same. Animals playing a big part of keeping common areas nice. I know that very well. I'm currently president of the RAVE. When people hear that, they go, oh my God, RAVE. It's the Reno Area Avian Enthusiasts. Webpage is right there in displaying. Those are a sample of animals that are in need of rehoming. When there's a problem in our community with a bird, I may get the phone call, could you come and get that bird out of my house? It's too noisy. What we don't have in our community, we have excellent facility. However, birds don't seem to have the safety net. Excuse me. The safety net that dogs and cats may have, if you want to call it that. There's like a tiny hole-in-the-wall space where they keep birds looking for a new home down at the Animal Services, and then they get to come over to Humane Society for adoption if not claimed. We are very fortunate in our community right now. Like I'm saying, we are having a good economy. People seem to be interested in having birds again. Before that time, during the Great Recession, birds were being abandoned and left anywhere they could leave them. In fact, as far as even throwing them in a trash dumpster, for God's sakes. In any case, Ms. Jung, if you're looking for something interesting, you've got an old petting zoo up at the Rancho San Rafael. Excellent idea, because I talked to the rangers. We just had an event, Rave did. We were doing show and tell with our birds at Rancho San Rafael. The petting zoo could be a very potential place to turn into a parrot site, possibly, or other animals for therapy. I mean, I could talk, like the other man said, for years on this topic.
Please
However,
summarize, Mr. Huckle.
Okay, I just appreciate your time for my consideration. Like I said, 32 years with the state of Nevada, I'm retired, so I appreciate your time. And hey, the ideas are boundless with animal, and I appreciate your consideration for being part of the solution. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Next up is Ms. Patricia Faber Johnson, followed by Ms. Lauren Acosta.
Welcome.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for this time to tell you a little bit more about my qualifications to serve on this board.
Please state your name for us.
Patricia Faber Johnson, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you.
I'm a Reno native. I was born and raised here back in 1954. I've seen the good aspects to the fast growth of our city and some of the bad aspects to the fast growth of our city. I worked for Bill Harrah for a number of years in the Ferrari distributorship, as my husband was the technical representative for Ferrari for years. After Bill Harrah's death, I went to Los Angeles and worked for Mercedes-Benz in North America for the controller for the Hollywood facility, where I handled millions and millions of dollars. I came back to Reno in 2003, and I obtained my real estate permit. I also served on the Disability Awareness Committee for the City of Reno and did serve as their president for a short time. I obtained my real estate license then and have helped, I still have it, it's current. I have helped hundreds of people both buy, sell, relocate to and from our area. During that time, up until 2016, I did serve as a property manager and did have a valid permit. My current brokerage doesn't offer that. So I am aware of the current real estate laws and the landlord-tenant laws, and I do keep active on them because they are changing rapidly, and I do have a couple rentals of my own. I'm extremely involved in the animal community here in town. I have For Pet's Sake, which is the oldest independent rescue, founded back in 1984 by Sarah Peterson. It is now a hospice and senior animal rescue. I work extremely hard with Rescue, which has recently become the largest independent rescue here in Washoe County, saving the lives of over 300 dogs in the 2018 calendar year. I do most of their fundraising for them. I am a member of the animal rescue team. We had to go through 6 weeks of Saturday trainings to learn how to help animals in emergency crisis. I have a For Pet's Sake page, Positively Committed Reno Realtor, and I work with all the local rescues to showcase an animal up for need. We do have a couple hiccups, but thanks to the efforts of WCRAS, NHS, and SPCA, Washoe County is known as one of the safest communities in the United States for an animal. If a dog makes it to Washoe County, he's got a great life ahead of him. And that's true for most animals. So I would be honored to serve on this committee and feel my qualifications surely show that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Lauren Acosta, followed by Mr. Tim Stoffel.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to apply for this position on the Washoe County Regional Animal Services Advisory Board, and this opportunity to speak to my qualifications. I am a real estate professional, business professional. I have 40 years plus experience in real estate, from sales agent to broker, owning my own company with a property management division and a homeowners association management division. I continue my work, that was in the Midwest, so you can check on it, but it might be difficult. I continued my work in real estate through moves to Arizona, New Mexico, where I worked in corporate real estate, doing mining company issues with their animal rescue and so on. Then on to California, where I segued into the mortgage loan end of the business. 9 years ago, we chose to move to the Reno area. And we are settled in the northeast part of Sparks. I'm still very active in business, as old as I am, and volunteer for causes that are important to me and the community. I am seeking to expand my involvement to the advisory and decision-making process for those causes. I'm not a native of Reno, and I think that's an advantage right now with all the growth that's coming this way. So perhaps I can give that something that I've witnessed in the Midwest, Phoenix, Arizona, many parts of New Mexico, and California, to the board here. So I hope you will consider me. I know the candidates are really good, so this is going to be a tight one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Tim Stoffel, followed by Mr. Al Rogers.
Mr. Stoffel, welcome.
Thank you. Tim Stoffel, 10515 Trail Drive, Reno, Nevada. I'm here today applying for the position on the Animal Advisory Board because I feel I can bring something unique and different to this board that this board actually needs. First of all, I want to point out that I was a member of the previous Animal Control Board, so I've been experienced with that, and I have attended most of the Animal Advisory Board meetings as my schedule permits me to. And anyway, as far as the real estate background stuff goes, that's the area that I don't have the credentials that many of the people that I do, but I do have a very interesting experience from the opposite side of that problem, and that is what tends to cause the real estate issues. And that's when people have problems with animals in their neighbors' yards and stuff like that, or have a smell or a noise problem, stuff like that. As part of the Animal Control Board, we had to deal with that. So I already have experience, hearing cases like that, making decisions on them. And I also I'm an amateur radio operator, I'm also a broadcast engineer. And I have to deal with the problems of communications towers, which have a very similar problem to animals. They tend to be a public nuisance, but they serve a useful purpose. Their dimensions are dictated by physics, just like biology dictates how animals work. And so these are things I've had to do, and I have acted as an expert witness, and I've had to defend my own cases on real estate issues in the past. As far as animals go, I can bring something unique to this board in the sense I work for Sierra Safari Zoo, and I am their large feline expert, as their feline expert in general. And I also, as a result of working at the zoo, have access to information and husbandry on just about anything in the animal kingdom that might ever come up before this board. And because of the broad experience with animals I've had, and I've been interested in animals my entire life, was lucky to go to a high school that had a very good biology program. I feel that I can bring some unique expertise to the board that the board really needs to have to be able to make informed recommendations on the care of animals in this county. As far as other experiences go, I am also a member of I'm president of the local Society of Broadcast Engineers chapter. I am on the board of directors of Sierra Nevada Christian Music Association. I'm the vice president of the Astronomical Society of Nevada, and I'm the board of directors of the National Translators Association. So I've had plenty of experience in being involved in meetings and stuff like that. So I feel that I can, bring that experience to the table as well. So overall, I think that I can help the advisory board out to be better by, taking care of the rest of the animal kingdom, not just the dogs, cats, horses, and livestock that seem to do that. But the world's got a lot more animals just in that, including the wildlife that occupies our area. I appreciate your consideration for this position. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Al Rogers?
Mr. Rogers, welcome back to the neighborhood.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, County Manager, Mr. DA, Madam Clerk. Great to see you all again. I'm here. I'm not going to go through my application. I'm sure you had plenty of time to read it. I'm probably somewhat of a known quantity, which may be an advantage or a disadvantage. But I am here today coming forth as I have over the last 30 years to serve Washoe County. After retiring 18 months ago, I've had the great opportunity to do whatever I want. I am now a retired realtor. I am an educator back into the Washoe County School District and soon to be a licensed drone pilot. So lots of things going on in my life. But I guess what drew me to this particular board and will continue to draw me to other boards that I look forward to sitting on is again serving Washoe County and being part of that community and having the background coming in to understand what my role, what my responsibility will be as you sit on an advisory board. Certainly we have the professionals within Regional Animal Services to do a phenomenal job and have done so for many, many years. I look forward to being a part of that in terms of being that advisory, now bringing that realtor profession to the table, matched with my background to hopefully be the best and most productive advisory board member that I can be. So with that, I appreciate your time today and look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I see no one else listed to speak.
Correct.
Is there anyone else, before we close this portion of this agenda item, is there anyone else wishing to speak under public comment? Now's your opportunity. Okay? All right, we will close that. So, Commissioner Jung, you were out of the room. What I suggested was that we each pick 2 members from the list, and we may very well end up having the pick by doing that. Is that suitable for you? I'll go last. Okay. Who wants to be first? Commissioner Herman, would you like to go? I'll go down.
I'll be brief.
Go right ahead.
But I'm going to do something unusual probably. I always try and look for the person that knows the most about the subject matter that we're going to be dealing with, and I'm going to vote for Tim Stoffel and Timothy Stoffel.
You can, you'll only have one. Is that what you're asking for?
No, I'm asking that you use him twice in mine.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Herman, we can't do that.
You can't do that?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So is that what you'd like to do, Commissioner Herman? Just
Sure.
one? Tim Stoffel. Okay. Commissioner Burke Bigler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would, my two would be Mr. Al Rogers and Ms. Lauren Acosta.
Okay. For me, this is a very difficult, very difficult decision because there are so many highly qualified people. I like also Mr. Tim Stoffel. And I am also going to go with Mr. Al Rogers. Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make the final motion. That will go to Mr. Al Rogers. And the reason why I think he is an important asset for the Animal Advisory Board, which from now on, I'd like the advisory board to vet this for us. That's what they do, advise, is that he does have the real estate background, active in real estate. And one of the biggest issues that we deal with in animal services, I do, as providing constituent services, is the issues with barking dogs. Does HOAs allow pit bulls? What is my property right with my animals? And Mr. Rogers, brand new to the real estate industry, well, 18 months, I think probably feels it the most acutely with his listings. So I think he would be the natural choice to go and advise us through the advisory board and policy and recommendations. So that is my motion as well, Mr. Chairman, since that is the majority of the votes.
That gives us 3. It doesn't, okay. So we have, we have a motion by Commissioner Jung, second by Commissioner Burke Bigler for Mr. Rogers. Let me go back through. Commissioner Herman was Mr. Stoffel, Commissioner Burke Bigler was Mr. Rogers and Ms. Acosta. Hartung was Stoffel and Rogers, and Jung only with Rogers. So that we do have the 3. Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Oh, someone didn't mark their ballot? Ms. Herman?
I'm trying to get to it.
I think it's too late, but we will note the vote was 4-0, correct? Thank you.
Was it an aye, Ms. Herman?
Yeah,
It was, okay.
messed it up.
Okay. All right. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Rogers, welcome to the board. Okay. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, that would take us then to your consent agenda, which appears today as item 5. Those are items 5A through 5H2, and I know I have a note on at least one, and I think maybe you have as well.
Okay.
I wanted to just bring to the attention on item 5C, a clarification just for understanding. That lists an amount of $58,410. This is for a project at the Human Services Family Engagement Center, a roof repair as a part of that project. The budgeted amount was $50,000. This item is asking then for that additional $8,410 for that project, just to clarify.
Okay. Also on the consent agenda, hold on just a second here. Commissioner Burke Bigler, did you want to make
Yes,
comment?
I wanted to point out on item 5B that we are receiving $16,000 from Dave and Cheryl Duffel, the Dave and Cheryl Duffield Foundation relating to Maddie's pet project. So again, money going into our animal services, and I just wanted to point that out. And then You may already have it on yours, but I also wanted to point out item 5E is the district special fund disbursement from Commissioner Kitty Jung, and she is dispersing $1,000 to the Community Human Services Agency to support the Senior Coalition of Washoe County, and we want to thank her for that. So I wanted to make those 2 points.
Okay, Mr. Manager, did we need to make any mention on anything else? Because I only had 5B and 5E noted.
Mr. Chair, you and I had previously talked also about 5H1. That's a $75,000 subaward to
There it is,
for
yes.
mental health services.
Thank you, yes. Absolutely. Ms. Howell. Yes, yeah, I mean, we're going to leave it in the consent, but would you come up and just mention this briefly? And then likely 5H2 as well. So important. Thank you.
It's already on.
Good morning. I wanted to give a little bit of an overview on the $75,000 that we are receiving from the state of Nevada. This has to do with behavioral health within our senior services program. Just as a way of background, we have received these grants 2 times before, but it was back in 2006 and 2009, and then there was a gap in time where we were not actively pursuing these grants. So we did apply to the state in this last year and were awarded $75,000. And what we plan to do with this is what we're noticing within our senior services programs is that we don't really have a robust infrastructure for mental health services. And we're starting to see a lot of our congregate meal sites and services with seniors that as our population continues to grow, so do their needs for services. We have been witnessing times where seniors are in need of assistance or having distress, some uncomfortability, and we don't really have any response to be able to assist them at a moment's notice. So this allows us to be able to do that, and we will continue to ask for this grant over and over again, and we'll ask for additional funding. $75,000 is a great start, but we will be asking for much more than $75,000 in the years to come.
Well done. How about, is H2?
H2, Mr. Chair, just for the audience, H2 is regarding a caregiver services grant for senior services.
So this grant, for many of you who probably remember, we had a consulting contract with Nevada Senior Services approximately 2 years ago. And in the recommendations, they did a service array analysis of some of the gaps that we had in our senior services programs. And there were 2 areas that really stood out as areas that we really needed to enhance in our senior services programs. One was the Caring for You, Caring for Me training that is provided to caregivers, has caregivers come together so that they can understand each other's perspectives, support groups for people that they have relatives living in their homes that they are trying to caregive for. It's a very difficult, overwhelming, emotional task for them. And so this is one area that we're trying to reach out to relatives to help support them. The second one is Skills to Care. Skills to Care is an occupational therapy intervention which has been shown by the Jefferson University to decrease behavioral occurrences, reduce functional dependence, and overall quality of life. So these are 2 brand new programs that we are bringing to senior services that we're very excited about. And really the goal is intended to increase caregiver self-efficiency and support, because the more support we can give caregivers, the less likely it is that seniors are going to end up in institutions and nursing homes. And so these are 2 very valuable programs and supports that we would like to give to caregivers in our community.
We know full well that the longer we can keep them in their own home, the better outcomes we get.
Mm-hmm.
My parents being 90, my mother will be 91 this year, and my stepdad will be 89 this year, still living in their own home. It's yes, she did. It's wonderful. You again are a shining star for us. Thank you. Your work is amazing. I'm thrilled. Okay. Does anyone want to mention anything else in the consent agenda? If not, Commissioner Burke Bigler, was yours in the form of a motion?
And Mr. Chair, we do have public comment.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's call public comment before we take that motion.
We have public comment on agenda item number 5E, Ms. Connie McMullen.
Ms. McMullen, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. For the record, Connie McMullen, President of the Washoe County Senior Coalition in Washoe County. And I want to thank Commissioner Jung for her generous donation. We, about 2 years ago, started to have a senior day among the various other organizations in the state of Nevada up at the legislature. To do this to draw attention to how important programs like Ms. Howell's are and keeping people at home self-sufficient, living independently. The problem with seniors is they can't get up there a lot of times. They don't have mobility. They don't have a ride. A lot of them don't drive. So we have RTC going to give 110 now seniors up to the legislature for our day. There'll be refreshments, lunch and breakfast, and of course you're all invited. And we have them sitting with each member of the assembly, and we're working on the Senate. So there'll probably be 3 seniors at a time sitting with a representative. We're having training this Friday at the Senior Service Center from 3 to 5. And it's real important because they've changed the lobbying rules and tightened them so significantly that seniors now can only meet in the offices of their constituent in their own district. Otherwise, they have to apply for a non-paid lobbyist license. So very, very difficult. So we want to train them so we don't get a complaint filed with the Commission on Aging because they are hosting our event. But we thank you very much, Commissioner Jung. Really kudos to you. And thank you all for all the great things you do for seniors.
Thank you, Ms. McMullen. Is there any other public comment, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing none, we have a motion for the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Motion by Commissioner Burke Bigler, second by Commissioner Herman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Manager. Yes, please. Mr. Burke Bigler.
Mr. Chair, I would propose for a block vote that we put in item 8, item 10, item 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And that's in the form of a motion, if that is acceptable to the commission.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Actually, I'd like to pull item 11 out.
Okay.
I didn't get an answer for this that I asked for yesterday, and the total cost and the overage is 100% overage. So I want to know who's responsible and what this is about.
Okay.
Okay, motioner agrees with that?
Okay. So we have a motion to, I'll read them again, 8, 10, removing 11, of course, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Motion by Burke Bigler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll read these.
Okay, motion and a second. Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Item 8 is recommendation to approve a direct grant award from National Institute of Justice fiscal year 18 Paul Coverdale Forensic Science Improvement Project, number 2018 CDBX 0072 for $150,000. No county match required for the Crime Lab Firearms Backlog Program, and to approve the sole source agreement and establish a professional services contract exceeding $100,000 with Ron Smith and Associates. Ron Smith and Associates is an accredited private forensic laboratory who provide a team of firearms examiners to assist with firearms case work backlog reduction for the retroactive grant period of January 1, 2019 to December 31, 2019, and if approved, authorize Sheriff Balaam to retroactively execute grant award documentation, direct Comptroller's Office to make necessary budget amendments, and authorize the purchasing contracts manager to execute the contract agreement. Item 10 is recommendation to approve changes to the regulations for child care facilities in Washoe County, to incorporate changes approved by the Legislative Subcommittee on Regulatory Changes, as well as the Department of Health Services Division of Public and Behavioral Health Child Care Licensing Program. Item 12 is a recommendation to award Washoe County bid number 3076-19 for the purchase of one replacement single conveyor portable material screen plant, bid item number 1, to the lowest responsible bidder, Goodfellow Corporation of Reno, Nevada, on behalf of the Community Service Department in the amount of $176,560, less trade-in value of $30,000, net cost $146,560. Item 13 is recommendation to award a bid and approve the agreement to the lowest responsible bidder for Cold Springs WRF Headworks in South Turkey Meadows WRF Clarifier Coating Project. Staff recommends SoCal Pacific Construction Company in the amount of $979,935. Item 14 is recommendation to award a bid and approve the agreement to the lowest responsible bidder for the South Turkey Meadows Steamboat Lift Station Force Main Bypass. Staff recommends Sierra Nevada Construction in the amount of $275,007. And item 15 is recommendation to approve an agreement for professional consulting services for the Washoe County South Turkey Meadows Wastewater 2020 Expansion Project Owners Representative Services between Washoe County and HDR Engineering in the amount of $375,244.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Burke Bigler and seconded by Commissioner Herman, I believe. Was it seconded by Commissioner Herman? Okay. Good. I just want to make sure I still had a motion on the table. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment?
We do, Mr. Chair. On agenda item number 12, Mr. Jacob Albright.
Welcome, Mr. Albright.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm Jacob Albright. I work for Kimball Equipment, the competitive bid on this project. We actually worked with the Washoe County staff on providing the information on what piece of equipment would work best for this application. And I would just request that this bid be revisited. We'd also requested information on what machine is actually being purchased, and hadn't received any information back on whether it was a new or used machine that this bid was awarded. And yeah, I just would request this bid would be revisited. We've worked with Washoe County for over 20 years. We actually provided the machine that this machine would be replacing. I've provided service for that machine over the years. We have a long-standing history with the Washoe County, and for those reasons, I would like this to be revisited. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any other public comment, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Jung.
According to this staff report on item number 12, of which we received public comment, I would like to place on the record, it says all commission districts. This is for Gerlach specifically, and I'd like staff reports to start recognizing that as well as a cost center that goes with Gerlach. We get accused many times that we don't do enough in Gerlach for that small population, including they want their own fire chief and fire department. Here's a great example. This is not all commission districts. This will not be used in Kitty Jung's district, District 3, which you're sitting in. And that needs to be identified there. I know nothing about the bidding process or what happened. That's something that I think the manager needs to speak to right now on the record before I agree with this. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I would ask.
Do we want to pull item 12 from the block? No? Okay, all right, go ahead, Mr. Manager.
If there are questions on the bidding process, I don't see our contracts manager here, but I do see Dave Solero here, who can answer specific questions related to this item.
Mr. Solero, welcome.
Good morning. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. While not intimately involved in the bidding of this specific project, I do know that our purchasing group out of the Comptroller's office does follow state law as well as capital projects in bidding any projects that we have. We create a scope of work, we advertise that scope of work along with all of the items that we're requesting for in that bid, and then take the bidding very seriously following those rules and regulations. I'm confident that that occurred in this item as well. And so I'm not sure if we received any protests. I've not heard of any written protests that were received through this process. So if there are other specific questions that we have.
Commissioner Jung.
Question, which was, is this going to be what the public comment person said, is this new or used equipment?
So this is new equipment and a refund on the existing piece of used equipment that we have.
And where did they fall in the bid for lowest to most responsive, which most responsive is quite lots of leniency for you and the purchasing manager?
Yeah, so as detailed in the staff report, the screen.
I couldn't find the staff report, sir, because I didn't know we had 2 binders.
Okay.
So thank you.
Well, so Kimball Rentals LLC bid on item number 1, $149,199. No bid on item number 2, and no bid on item number 3, which was the trade-in. So their bid was $149,199.
But didn't address the other.
Correct.
Okay.
Goodfellow Corporation, their low bid for item number 1 is $176,560. However, with a trade-in value of $30,000, and that's where we got.
So they didn't
that's
fulfill
where they were the low bid.
your request for bid for all of the areas in which you were, as the purchasing manager. Sorry, Mr. Solaro.
As purchasing manager, correct.
Right. Okay, I don't have a problem with going forward as long as we have that on the record. Thank you, Mr. Solaro.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Anything else? Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Burke Bigler, a second by Commissioner Herman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, perhaps we should go to item. Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
perhaps we should go to item 11 since that was referenced in the last discussion of the block vote. And
Please. Go
dispense
ahead.
of that
I
item.
apologize.
This is a recommendation to approve $230,755 increase to master consulting software agreement with Civic Solutions Group for a total contract cost of $544,000 for hosting technical support costs for automated 4E claiming and random moment in time systems and technical assistance and strategic planning support for cost allocation plans within the Human Services Agency. Amber Howell is here to represent this item and answer any questions.
Mr. Manager, at the same time, hold on just a second, Ms. Howell, forgive me. Our screens have all locked again. So go right ahead, Ms. Howell. You're probably going to see some hustle and bustle back here, but please continue. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Amber Howell for the record. This is a new software that we purchased back in 2017. We've been working on this for the past year. Why we decided to go this route is we have a plethora of federal funding that we have to start tracking and send to the state of Nevada and the federal government for our Title 4E program. We bring in about $17 million in Title 4E every year. And what we were finding is that our system was very antiquated. It was having a tremendous amount of errors. We were finding miscalculations. So we went ahead and started searching for a good software that would help us do that. The initial projections of the amount of revenue that will come in with this new system is at least $800,000 annually. This is a big deal for HSA because anytime we can more appropriately capture our utilization and our costs, we get additional revenue from the federal government. So again, we have projected $800,000 additional revenue annually based on this new software. We're really excited about it, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jung.
My question is not about the purpose of this. I think this is a great purpose, but when I'm looking at the staff report as I read it, we have $250,000 nearly increase of paying this provider, which is 100% increase of what we were paying them. So can you explain to me why this, unless I'm reading this incorrectly, but I read this like a public member. It says we're gonna do a $237.55 increase for a total of $544. Where did this, can you lead me to why this contract has ballooned like this, and was it necessary, and why so much money, and did this person not bid it correctly?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank
So what we did is when we first started the project, we were looking specifically at just Title IV-E. When we started learning more about the project, we learned that we could do it for adult and senior services, we could bring in targeted case management, and all these other funding.
So you answered the question. Okay. But so here's my request from now on from staff, Mr. Manager. And I get it, I used to write staff reports, and it's a lot of cutting and pasting and just getting that stuff out of there. But ultimately, it does, the responsibility relies on all the people that check off and say this is good enough, you know, the DA, finance, et cetera. But I'm having, and this is not the first time I brought this up, trouble with staff reports, and specifically what the subject item is on an agenda. Because I just look at it blind. I don't look at the staff reports until I start reading it, because I want to read like my citizens read it. And I just think that we all need to, and not, I mean, I think everybody should be mindful of this, and ultimately it is the manager's responsibility, but, and I know you're bored writing these because they are boring, but, you know, read them as well in that way, because when I saw those numbers, and I think any other person who pays taxes or manages their own budget would say, hey, what's this about? I have no question that the vendor that you're using is recapping and, most importantly, legitimizing all of your expenses. So I'll make a motion to approve this. I just needed a lot more information to be put on the public record so I can explain this as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will move to approve.
Okay, so thank you, Commissioner Jung. Okay, any other questions for Ms. Howell? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jung, second by Commissioner Burke Bigler. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think motion carries unanimously. I did not hear you, Commissioner Herman. Thank you. Please affirm your votes. Mr. Manager.
I would ask the board, if you perhaps would want to go to item 17. There seems to be a number of people signed in on that item. It's probably the
Okay, let's.
largest number signed in. That's the first reading.
I'm okay with that.
Item 17 is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance pursuant to NRS 278.0201 through 278.0207.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If introduced, this will be Bill Number 1816, an ordinance pursuant to NRS 278.0201 through 278.0207, approving a development agreement as required by the Warm Springs Specific Plan at WSSP.8.1 to utilize the land use designation specified on the Warm Springs Specific Plan land use for tentative map case numbers WTPM 17-0015, WTPM 17-0017, WTPM 17-0018, WTPM 17-019, excuse me, and WTPM 17-0020, Palomino Ranches Estates number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which were a series of tentative parcel maps which approved the division of a 67.60 acre parcel into 15 total lots ranging from 2.5 acres to 5 acres in size. In order to develop any property in the WSSP more densely than general rural, one dwelling unit per 40 acres, the specific plan requires that these development agreements be approved. Among other things, the development agreements adopt the Development Standards Handbook for the properties in question, which specifies the denser development potential available on affected properties, which in this case would result in individual residential parcels of 2.5 acres or 5 acres in size. Additionally, the agreements would specify other aspects of allowable development on the properties, including uses allowed, density and intensity of those uses, building sizes, setbacks, building heights, and other matters concerning the development of the land. The applicant and property owner is LW Land Company. The subject site is approximately 67.6 acres in size and is located at the south end of Grass Valley Road, approximately 1/2 mile south of Whiskey Springs Road. The assessor's parcel number is 077-130-23. The master plan category is rural residential, and the regulatory zone is high-density rural.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, I have a number of questions, but how would you like to proceed, Board? Would you like Mr. Pelham, here's the question. Would you like Mr. Pelham to give us a short staff report? We'd like to start with that, and then would you, let me complete, and then would we like to potentially open public comment, hear what they have to say, and then bring it back to the board? So we can bring, Mr. Pelham, come on up, give us an overview, and then if we have some questions regarding that, and then I'm going to open public comment. Welcome. Should be on. No?
Hello?
There.
Sorry about that. If we can pull up my PowerPoint presentation, please.
It's up there on the right-hand screen.
Oh, there it is. I apologize. Good afternoon. For the record, Roger Pelham with Washoe County Planning and Building. This development agreement is necessary to effectuate the land use as approved in the Warm Springs specific plan. The division of land was approved through a series of parcel maps, and those are noted there. This is the first reading. Of course, development agreements come directly to the Board of County Commissioners rather than, say, through the Planning Commission or something of that nature. Here you have a vicinity map. This indicates the parcel of land where these divisions have taken place. Again, to effectuate those divisions, this development agreement is necessary. The result will be a series of parcels, 3 of which are 2.5 acres in size, the remainder of which are 5 acres in size. The reason for this, again, is because it's required by the Warm Springs specific plan. Within the documents that are attached to your staff report, these were reviewed very carefully, both by planning and other relevant agencies, and a number of corrections have been noted that need to be made. I have been working with the applicant since those corrections were identified, and prior to your second reading, if introduced today, all of those corrections will be made. As a matter of fact, we do have those documents corrected and ready for your next hearing. With that, I am available to address any particular questions you might have as to the nature of the Development Standards Handbook. This is essentially a clone of several others that have been approved under the specific plan in the past.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Pelham? Commissioner Jung.
Can you show me on the map where this is?
And
orient me, I don't,
Certainly.
that's not my area.
You bet. In the upper left-hand corner, we have Pyramid Highway. This would be 5 or 6 miles, actually probably closer to 10 miles north of, say, Spanish Springs.
Yep.
We have Whiskey Springs Road there that kind of heads off to the east, and then Grass Valley that goes south there. This is really located between Grass Valley Road and Ironwood Road. Ironwood also intersects Pyramid Highway to the west.
Okay.
How many acres is that?
67.
67
plus or
acres.
minus.
0.6.
Okay. It's a beautiful area. I love that area. I have a question for you. One thing that was brought up in public comment is that this has never been updated since 1992. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is there a reason why?
I would be speculating if
That's
I
okay,
were
don't
to
speculate.
put a reason. However, it is, we are currently in the process of going forward and updating that. In fact, at your next meeting, I will be bringing forward an item to remove the financing plan. That is step one. Step number two is going to be opening up the entire specific plan itself for what I believe everyone will agree is a much-needed update.
Sure. Is this identified in the regional plan as an area to grow? Density and growth and
Yes.
that far away?
In that
With no
it
public
is-
transit?
It is within the Truckee Meadows service area, which is
Is that
drawn right
changing
in-
with the regional plan?
I couldn't
Okay.
speculate, I'm sorry.
Right. Don't speculate. Thank you. And then my final question is, has this been brought to the Citizens Advisory Board for this 67 acres that staff is proposing to intensify and be an area to land this missing middle growth, or maybe it's the 1% growth, I'm not sure. Has that been taken to the citizens? And why not?
Not in terms of the current development requests. Tentative parcel maps are not required to be heard by the Citizen Advisory Board. Neither are development agreements, because the tentative parcel maps go to the Parcel Map Review Committee for approval. Part of those conditions were, of course, that they get the development agreement as required by the plan. Those development agreements come directly to the Board of County Commissioners. So no, the CAB is not a part of that particular process.
Is there a reason why? That you can remember historic, or maybe the manager knows he came from a planning background, right here at Washoe County. Is there a reason why that's not? I feel like that would be something I would take to an advisory board to get advice.
I couldn't say why.
It's just
What I can say is when the plan itself was adopted, certainly that came under quite a lot of scrutiny. As you've rightly pointed out, that was 25 years ago or something now.
Whole different neighborhood, different
You bet.
people. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to support this. I think it is ripe for more work in terms of careful planning and especially when you're going to do this intensification of density, not even in the McCarran Loop. So I won't be supporting this ordinance. I think it needs to be vetted by the citizens that are affected today, not in 1992, by that area, because it has changed. We've taken the financing away. We got sued about the financing. I mean, we did a lot of stuff lately, and I just feel like it's only fair that people that are there today have an input on, what happens in their community. So I won't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. I don't have anybody else on my speaker list. I only have-
Commissioner Herman?
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, Commissioner Herman. You are there. Forgive me. Commissioner Herman, thank
If I
you.
turn this on.
Thank you.
Okay, I agree with Commissioner Jung on this. I think we've kind of jumped the gun on this. We have in this plan that you're bringing us 2.5 acre parcels. Can't put a well and a septic on them. How are you going to build on them? We just took all the funding out of the SPA now, and I've been hearing rumors about a whole lot of changes getting made to the plan, and it just seems like we're kind of pushing our luck on this one. Maybe trying to get it done before we get the new plan done, maybe. So I will not be for this at this time at all.
Okay. Commissioner Burke Bigler, would you like to speak?
Yeah,
You
I
are
just
there.
have a quick question. Who's LW Land Company, and have they worked with us on projects out in this area and other areas? previously?
Yes.
My
it's
question also is the applicant.
Brian
here.
Murphy, and I do not see the applicant here today.
Okay. Okay, so I have some of the same concerns that both Commissioner Jung and Commissioner Herman have. I'm not so concerned with 2.5 acre parcels and 5 acre parcels being inside the McCarran Loop, so that part doesn't bug me. But what does bug me is the same thing that Commissioner Herman brought up with respect to wells, with sewer. I'm not in favor of moving forward on this prior to doing a plan update. I think if we're there, I sort of feel the same, that you know, these folks are trying to get this done. These are similar to the Newell parcels, except for, I think I read there's 3 2.5 acre parcels, and then the rest are 5s.
That is the case, and the background to why there are 3 2.5s and then the remainder is 5 is actually has to do with health code, not planning code.
I see.
And that the first division of land after a certain date essentially can use the old code, and then any subsequent divisions, and here we have 5, you know, we've got 5 serial maps, that maps 2, 3, 4, and 5 would then be subject to current standards, which is 5 acre minimum for well and septic on the same parcel.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm a little concerned with the whole timing, and so I don't believe I'm going to be supportive of this. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Pelham? Mr. Liparelli.
Mr. Chairman, not a question for Mr. Pelham, just a comment if you're...
Please.
Property that's contained within the specific plan area has to be developed pursuant to the process that the applicant and the staff brought forward. They're required by the plan to have a development agreement. So the applicant and the staff are following the process that the specific plan area dictates for development of maps within that jurisdiction. So if the board isn't ready to act on this, then you don't have to introduce it, but it is the process that has to be followed in order for a property owner to pursue development of their land.
Okay, understood. And based on language in the Warm Springs area plan, that's why it didn't see the cab or the PC?
Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Pelham mentioned, the submission of a subdivision map does not require cab review as a matter of state law. It's not a zone change. It's not a master plan change. It's not the kind of development approval that cabs are involved with in the current structure. So you don't need a cab approval to act on on this map.
Commissioner Burke, Bigler.
Thank you. Could we ask for this to be taken back and have the cab review it?
I think that's allowed.
I don't think there's a legal problem with it. It's a policy question that, you know, your staff may want to comment on. Under the current structure, this is the correct process.
Well, that would seem appropriate to me, but it is Commissioner Herman's district, so.
Understood. Mr. Pelham, any further comments before I let Commissioner Herman chime in, or would you?
Why don't you go ahead and I'll respond to it.
When did parcel maps apply to more than 4 parcels? When did that change?
I don't believe that there's been a change there, as that has been one of the methods for division of land, at least since I've been a planner in this jurisdiction. However, when there are serial maps, that is to say more than one map on the same portion of land within a 5-year time period, the standards then become the same as a tentative subdivision map. But again, a series of parcel maps is one of the processes available for division of land. What I was going to say previously is I am happy to take your direction if we would care to postpone 30 days, or whatever the appropriate amount of time is, and take this back to take it to the Citizen Advisory Board. I'm happy to do that.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. Wasn't thinking about responding to that.
Okay.
But,
okay, that's fine.
But if that's a possibility and you'd be willing to do that, I think it might be helpful.
Certainly.
My big concern, Mr. Pelham, is the proximity to the plan update, and that's where I mean, the plan hasn't been updated since 1992. So I think it's certainly ripe, and that would be my one single thought and comment as a finish.
I
Why
would
don't
say
we-
that staff would agree with you.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
time for an update.
Yes. Okay. Commissioner Jung, did you have any other questions of staff before I open public comment? Okay. All right. I'm gonna open public comment with the board's indulgence, and let's hear what they have to say. Madam Clerk, would you call public comment, please?
Certainly. First up is Ms. Tammy Holtstill, followed by Ms. Susan Ambrose. And we'll need the overhead too, please.
Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee for the record. This is part of the issues I've had with Washoe County and the city of Reno and their legislative issues. NRS was NRS 278 330 to 353. Those seem to be forgotten about. It is a subdivision of property. You pick and choose the ones you want to use to circumvent doing what needs to be done. It is a subdivision of parcels. It is a subdivision, which is a tentative map. That means it should go through all the same hoops as everything else. Period, end of story. I'm tired of the circumventing of statute. You pick and choose what you want to use. You use them all. That's what they're there for, to make sure that everybody and every citizen has the right to do or say their freedoms. And that has to do with that right there. It was a circumvention. Also, I'm a layman. I'm not a staff member, a planner, but yet I know that this is in the TMSA, but it is Tier 2. It's not being intensified to Tier 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holtstill.
Ms. Susan Ambrose, followed by Ms. Pam Roberts.
Welcome again, Ms. Andrews.
Hi, I'm representing the Warm Springs Community Task Force, and we have been advocating for a very long time about all the problems going on in the specific plan area. And the primary reason is because it's an outdated plan that does not apply to today's world. And unfortunately, the developer's taking advantage of this. They're using the serial parcel maps to get around doing the subdivision requirements. Substandard work, in our opinion, because it's not on par with where the developer's having to do anywhere else in the county. We took exception to the recommended conditions imposed upon Mr. Murphy by Mr. Larry Johnson, the president of our GID, in that he was only asking that new roads be to GID standards. We did want to thank the county staff, Mr. West, Planning and Engineering, Mr. Pelham, for recognizing that, no, that's not acceptable today, and that we want those new roads to meet county standards. I do need the overhead projector. The only thing that we did find that neither county staff nor the GID made any reference to a bridge across Cottonwood Creek. Oh, sorry. This is a view from the adjoining, there is an easement Mr. Murphy wants to use, and it is going to cross Cottonwood Creek to and onto Ironwood Road, which is not the desired route. The GID was hoping for Grass Valley Road. However, this creek has overflowed 3 times since 2017, and this is a view towards where his easement would cross the creek. This is what happened to his temporary easement a few weeks ago when we had the flooding. He had did not put in concrete culverts with any protection for erosion, and the velocity behind that creek can be very, very strong, as Ms. Herman knows, and it caused all that damage to his temporary easement. So we had concerns that why was there no request, if he's going to use that easement, to put a bridge across the top? And I agree that we do need to open up the plan. We've been begging for that and the Development Standards Handbook to be revised. It's not appropriate to continue to allow these developers to cut corners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrose.
Ms. Pam Roberts.
Welcome, Ms. Roberts.
Good every afternoon yet. This, again, for the record, Pam Roberts. I am a resident of Palomino Valley, specifically a resident within the specific plan area. And before I lose my train of thought, I would like to bring your attention to page 40 of the Plan and Administration Enforcement Procedures within the Warm Springs Specific Plan, which specifically states all tentative subdivision maps, parcel maps, and required development standard handbook should be referred to the Citizens Advisory Board for their review and recommendation. I'm so tired of people not reading stuff and looking at your own regulations, whether it's the Washoe County Code, it's the Warm Springs Area Plan, the Warm Springs Specific Plan area. You know, I'm not an expert in zoning. I'm not an expert in any of this, but I am an expert in reading in the sense that I read things and I prepare. And so when you're planning, whether it's your planning staff or the parcel map review committee or whoever it is, we need to read and follow our own regulations, our own plans, and our own handbooks, even if they're outdated, which I've already addressed. Ms. Ambrose already talked about a concern about the easement. My concern, and I'll just go on the record, I don't have any personal problem with this developer or this land company. In fact, I live in a house built by Mr. Murphy, and we love our house, okay? It's not about him. It's not about that land company. It's about the procedures and following the procedures and making sure that the roadways that we use are safe and built to county standards, making sure that they're taking account for flood mitigation, drainage swales. For example, the development agreement really doesn't address drainage channels. If you look at Washoe County 4.1, there's specific things with drainage channels. If you look at Washoe County 5.2, driveway aprons. If you look at roadways in rural areas where it's suburban 1.5 acres, the roads are supposed to be a certain width, and then they're supposed to be asphalt paved, and they're supposed to be gravel shoulders. Well, I live on Broken Spur, or off of Broken Spur, and Broken Spur does not have adequately paved roads with those gravel side standards. So the developer was able to build all the homes, one of which I live in, without complying with those standards. Somebody dropped the ball, and don't drop the ball again, please.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Madam Clerk?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak that is not signed in? Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comment. So I think our options are just not to introduce if we feel that it needs a little more work. Staff, Mr. Pelham, do you have adequate direction?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that I have heard that this board would like me to take this back to the Citizen Advisory Board and then come back to you with their comments and recommendations. And I would suggest that that would probably be, because I don't have their schedule in front of me, I'm going to say something closer to 60 days rather than 30.
Okay. And in that conversation, will you certainly address roadways, how that would be administrated. I'm curious about wells. I think you can have a well on a 2.5 acre parcel. Can you? Is that not correct?
I want to be very careful because that's actually health code, not planning code,
Okay.
so I am by no means the expert. But that is certainly my understanding for the first division of land after
first
a
division,
particular
okay.
date. And in terms of the roads, I believe I can address that. Roads associated with this development proposal will meet county standards.
Okay.
Those are the conditions that were placed on the tentative parcel map approvals.
So those are the things that I'm interested in, you know, wells, septics, you know, how that's all going to be administrated. And I understand that those are health code issues, but that's where, those are the questions that I have. Commissioner Herman, did you have other questions? You're signed in. Go ahead.
As in answer to you, Vaughn, or Chair.
Vaughn is fine.
All right. Yeah, I'm not used to that, so congratulations, by the way. As far as I know, from what I'm talking to the water engineer, 5 acres is the minimum size for a well and a septic, but maybe that's changed over the last few weeks or something. I just wanted to ask you a favor. When you go into your planning, the new SBA plan, and start putting that all together, I hope that you're planning on having some meetings in the valley with the people and get their ideas so that we don't have to fight the plan all the way through. If we can work together on it and make it work, I think it would save a lot of money and a lot of time. So that's just my favorite ask.
Certainly.
Okay.
Commissioner Burke, Bigler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say, and I think it would also be a good idea to consider the bridge, or at least how are they going to get over that creek when the water's running? And if it's not a bridge, what is it? You know, so.
If I may, I can address that. With the approval of the tentative parcel maps, before the final maps can be approved, in addition to a development agreement, our topic today, a set of construction improvement drawings are necessary, and those construction improvement drawings would show how the road would cross that, and that would, of course, be reviewed by our engineering staff. I have seen those drawings, and I want to say that there is a series of concrete culverts, several. I don't remember the number, and I don't remember the size. But obviously, those would be sized to take whatever flow is anticipated.
Okay, Commissioner Jung.
Who initiated this, staff or a developer?
This is initiated by the developer.
Okay. Should we wait until the regional plan is finally approved before we are doing anything? I mean, frankly, anything at all? Shouldn't we see where growth is planned and developed? And I don't know when I don't serve on that board. I don't know when that, and I've never got a straight answer when that might be done. But shouldn't we sort of back off a little bit till we have a master plan for our whole community, anticipating growth in areas and potential areas that are appropriate for growth and what we need in growth, rather than, it just feels like backwards if we're going to spend, we have a regional planning governing board and an agency that makes a lot of money functionally to tell us and help us to plan. I feel like I would want to wait for the regional plan to be endorsed by the people that sit on that board before we do any more of this developer-initiated creep that we're seeing. And I mean, maybe that's a policy decision. I mean, what do you say? You're expert, subject matter expert in planning. What does the American Association of Planners say? American Planning Association, APA.
I would have to go look that up.
Could you look that up for me and send that to me, Mr. Manager? Thank you.
We have a section of code that is available if a moratorium is requested by the.
I didn't ask for a moratorium. I want to know what the best practices are.
Okay.
And why do we have a regional planning governing board and a regional plan if we're always going ahead of it? I mean, maybe in all these years that I've worked in government, have never figured out what the role and function is of that. I know it's a settlement agreement, but it just feels like, and that's not in any way, I'm not trying to chastise you at all, you're just doing your job, but I want to see best practices for that. Maybe we shouldn't even have that regional planning board if we're always going sideways, it appears like, or ahead of the cart, so to speak. But I would like to know, what is the best practice? What does data show us? Not of what have we always done, because I'm a fifth generation here. I want to know, how do we not go on the path of Denver, Colorado? You see what I'm saying? So if we're going to spend money on regional planning, I need it to inform me. And I'm not asking for a moratorium. I just need to know if where I'm going is correct or not, in terms of what role that plays and what role we play and what role a developer plays coming in here.
Perhaps, Mr. Liparelli, would you like to chime in here?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suggest you pursue parallel tracks and not suggest that a person who's trying to develop property under a current code should be forced to wait until the code is amended. You can expose the county to problems with takings arguments and all sorts of things if you legislatively want to change the ballgame after a person has already come in the door. So they're parallel tracks.
Okay. Okay. Okay, have we given staff enough direction?
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Pelham, thank you. Mr. Manager, so we don't need to do anything, we're just not, do we need a motion to not introduce Mr. Liparelli?
Mr. Chairman, you can elect not to introduce the bill, but I think the staff would appreciate the direction on when you'd be prepared to give consideration to the proposed development agreement again.
Mr. Pelham, so you told me it's going to, you said to us, rather, that perhaps 60 days?
Yeah, I'm speculating here a little bit. I don't have the Citizen Advisory Board calendar in front of me,
Okay.
but some meet monthly, some meet every other month, and so it's going to be in the 1 to 2 month time frame before I can go to the Citizen Advisory Board. Perhaps to err on the side of caution, if it were 2 months and then another 30 days to get a revised staff report in front of you, perhaps we're even looking at as far as 90 days.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with that?
Mr. Chairman, I was just looking at the code to see if there's a time frame mandated for action by the board. Maybe Mr. Pelham, who probably knows the code better than I, knows the answer. I'm not seeing one right now.
If you look under the 800s in the development code, under development agreements, gosh, 80.
Yeah, it's 110-814.
814. I want to say that there is a 60-day time frame from submission of a complete application to action by the Board of County Commissioners.
So I'd recommend trying to stick with that to see if you could bring it back within that time frame to avoid claims that the county hasn't acted in a timely manner.
Okay.
Mr. Pelham's memory is excellent. 110-814.30, paragraph A. The clerk of the board shall schedule a public hearing before the board within 60 days from the date the director finds the application complete.
And that was today, or this hearing is within that
Okay.
60 days.
Okay, so we're not in violation. So 60 days, it might, Mr. Pelham said it might even take as much as 90. So I mean, I'm okay with the time schedule. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. I mean, I don't want staff to rush through it and we have questions. I want it to be done. I want the due diligence to be done properly. That's from my perspective. Commissioners, any other comments for staff? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Pelham. All right. What would you like to do, board? Would you like to take a short bio break, Mr. Manager? What?
We have 3 items left, Mr. Chair. A first reading, policy, and then the update on the legislative session.
Okay. And, okay.
So
Let's
we
forge.
then, since we just finished the other first reading, perhaps we should go to item 16. This is an introduction, first reading of an ordinance amending Washington County Code, Chapter 110.
Would you like me to begin, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please. This is near and dear to my heart.
This will be Bill number 1817, an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110, Development Code, within Article 810, Special Use Permits, Section 110.810.60A, 3, and 4. Modifications of a special use permit to update the reference to the department name in that section to Planning and Building Division, and to change 2 of the requirements for the director to approve modifications of approved special use permits that involve more than a 10% increase in the floor area covered by existing structures associated with the use, and more than a 10% increase in site area covered by the use, by replacing the word more with the word less, and for other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Manager.
If we'd like a brief explanation, my understanding is this brings this portion of the code in line with some previous changes that have been made. This is actually reducing staff's authority, correcting what appears to be, what is in other portions of the code. So
Yes. Welcome. We've had this conversation offline a couple of times. Mr. Solero, you and I, staff, proceed.
Good afternoon, Julie Olander with Planning and Building. So as this was stated, it's a clarification and correcting probably what become a little bit of a confusing part in the code. We're also updating the phrase to Planning and Building Division, which has changed over the years. So this is just one section of code where it talks about special use permits and what the Director of Planning and Building can or cannot do. And in this situation, we're changing it to that they can make those, a change to it, alter it if it's less than 10% of the floor area, and then also for the overall site. So it's a fairly simple change. However, it does truly clarify what the Director of Planning and Building Division can or cannot do.
I know in Spanish Springs, we've had a couple of instances where, oh my goodness, there are some structures that probably should have not been allowed, but were just administratively put through. I'm glad staff got on this. Thank you, Mr. Solero. Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Trevor Lloyd's not here, but I know that there's been a lot of hard work put in on this to address this fairly rapidly. Is there any questions from staff? Because I have no one wishing to speak. Okay. I'm sorry, give me the bill again, Madam Clerk.
1817.
1817, thank you. Looking for an introduction.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Burke Bigler.
I move to introduce Bill 1817, amending Development Code 110, and we will do the second reading on possible adoption of the ordinance on February 26th.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, next item then would be item 9. This is a recommendation to approve, 1, a Washoe County policy regarding complaints of policy violations against the county manager, assistant county managers, and department heads, and 2, Washoe County policy regarding complaints of policy violations against elected officials. Mary Canderas from the District Attorney's Office is here. There's been a number of us working on these policies, and I will let Mary.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair,
Ms. Canderas,
Commissioners,
welcome.
and Manager Slaughter. I'm here today to present the complaint policy against department heads and elected officials. As you know, Washoe County, as a local government employer, is responsible to ensure that its employees are not subject to harassment, discrimination, or retaliation. Accordingly, the Board of County Commissioners last year adopted a zero-tolerance policy towards harassment, discrimination, or retaliation. The manager's office recognized that this policy that applies to all employees does not specifically address our department heads. So Human Resources, along with our office, was tasked with coming and creating a policy that would deal with all complaints against department heads and elected officials, but it would also reinforce handling of complaints of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. The first issue that we confronted when coming up with these policies, and there were several members of the district attorney's office who looked at this, is that we have several different types of officials running departments. We have elected officials, we have department heads that are appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, we have department heads that are appointed by the county manager, we have assistant county managers, we have the library trustees, we have the district health officer. And so we have all these different status that we had to kind of take into account in kind of putting these policies together, which is why we have two separate policies, one that deals with elected officials and one that deals with all other department heads. So there are two policies basically for your consideration. What we did in creating the policies is try to have basically two goals. And the first goal was to have uniformity in handling complaints. The second goal was to have appropriate procedure based upon the status of the official or department head. So basically, I'll go over these really briefly with you, but in the uniformity of handling complaints, both policies basically mirror what we do with the current discrimination and harassment policy. We get a complaint, and basically our county manager is the point person for all things except for complaints against himself. So, but the complaint somehow gets to the manager, whether it's from an employee, another department head, HR. Then they come together with a plan of action. If alternative work arrangements are required, those are made. Notice of complaint is given to the subject of the complaint on a case-by-case basis. And then an investigation is conducted if it's necessary. Sometimes that's internal. Sometimes we send that out to an independent investigator. So the county manager basically gets all that in motion and is the point person for the investigation, the findings, and determining any recommendations. Now, if there are any recommendations, and what we want the county manager, of course, to do is take action to protect the employees and prevent any future violations of policy, and that's what the law requires. But also, we would like the commissioner to make recommendations to officials if there are ways that they could handle a situation better. But we realize that the county manager doesn't have, let's say, authority over all officials. So we have built in kind of a protest mechanism if the recommendations need to be challenged. And that's the second part of all the procedure. And basically what happens is elected officials and the county manager himself, if there were, let's say, some kind of a policy violation that were going to result in some kind of a, how would I say, some kind of censure or something like that, it has to be handled in an open meeting. And so the open meeting law has a set of procedures for that. For people appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, department heads, that can sometimes be handled in a closed session. So we have a whole series of procedures by that. We take that step by step so you don't have to try and reinterpret the open meeting law. If we're dealing with the library board, director, or the district health officer, we have the procedures for that. We ask the county manager to confer with that appointed authority. So basically what we've tried to do is kind of give you a step-by-step guide to handle every complaint that would come before any type of department head in the county. I stand open for any questions.
Okay, seeing none. I will open public comment. Ms. Tammy Holt still.
No, I'm good with it now that I got to listen to her.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else
No,
in the
sir.
audience wishing to speak who has not signed in? Okay. I
Move
will
to approve, Mr. Chair.
have a motion by Commissioner Jung, second by Commissioner Burke Bigler. Any
Mr.
other
Chair.
discussion? Mr. Liparelli.
Mr. Chairman, we identified a few typos. We had internal references in the policy to different sections of the code, of the proposed policy. They're minor typo, page 9, paragraph 2, change section 6 to section F. Page 10, change section 4 to section D. And the elected officials policy, page 4, paragraph F, change section 4 to section D. So if you're inclined to approve it, we will make those changes before the policy is published.
Okay.
And the clerk would need a copy of that corrected document, please.
Okay. Does the motioner? Yes. Okay. Seconder agrees. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Liparelli. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Manager, we are on,
I lost my agenda. We are on
I think
item,
we're on legislative issues now. I think that's everything, isn't it?
yes, item 19. Just for the record, item 18, there is no need for today for closed session, so that takes us to item 19. This is discussion direction to staff regarding legislation or legislative issues proposed by legislators, by Washoe County Truckee Ambrose Fire Protection District, or by other entities permitted by the Nevada State Legislature to submit bill draft requests or such legislative issues that may be deemed by the chair or the board to be of critical significance to Washoe County. You have had distributed to you, it's in the record now, a listing, a short listing of week 1 bills of interest. Jamie Rodriguez and a number of other staff are in Carson City daily and have prepared for us this list. I know Chief Moore is here, I believe, as well. And we do have a slide, I believe. So in the interest of time, Mr. Chair, there's a couple that we could probably jump to.
Commissioner Burke Bigler, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in first before Mr. Manager? How would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a comment. I think it would be beneficial to this board if we got this the day before. This is really delayed, and it gives us, it's very difficult for us to say, oh, well, what does this say, or
So-
what does that say? And so if we could get this on a
Mr. Chair,
going forward basis.
I would ask for, this time around, forgiveness. We will have this in your packet no later than Fridays before the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Week 1, we're still getting our
Yeah, no,
legs under us there.
It is fast
So-
and furious right now.
Perhaps in the interest of time, if there's any of these that you have interest in, as well as we, again, we've set up our system, working with our legislative liaisons, with the chair. Staff is in constant discussion with myself and others throughout the organization, with our elected officials.
Okay.
I guess one that I would point to, and Chief Moore is here, is AB4. This is one that's sort of been long awaited. This is the City of Reno bill. This allows cities to create a fire district. Fire district operations are separated from city operations, but it is under the purview of the City Council. It allows the imposition of a tax, but does not expressly describe exactly how that works. So we have some questions about that. Property taxes, Washoe County, all of our overlapping rates, we are at the cap. So there is no room in the cap for additional rates for a city to add property tax.
Okay.
So we have questions about that and how that would work. I think the staff recommendation is to oppose that as it's written currently. Certainly we'll continue to monitor it. We're just not sure how that city fire district would work.
Okay, board. Commissioner Jung.
So for AB4, who asked for this?
This is the City of Reno bill. This is.
Well, isn't this what we asked them to do, Mr. Slaughter? If we're, why would we oppose when this board hasn't even got to look at it? But they've been asking us from the day that we divorced to regionalize fire, and the pushback, at least for me when I was chair and even before that, was create your own dedicated fund that matches ours, that is not at the vagaries of your general fund problems. And we would be happy to talk about consolidation. So to automatically oppose it, I think they're doing exactly what we asked them to do. And this is why we get boggled down with staff doing stuff that hasn't asked us about.
Well, Mr. Chair, the reason we're here is to discuss.
Well, it says
with
oppose.
the board.
It's
That's
not
staff
true. It
recommendation.
says oppose.
That's staff recommendation.
With no consultation. This
That's
is
why we're
exactly
here
what I've
today.
asked the city of Reno to do, you guys, and you guys supported that. Now, I understand if there's questions about it, but to say oppose is, this is where we get in trouble all the time as a region. We ask a group to do something, they do it, and then the other group says, well, I don't like the way you did it. I mean, this was precisely to take, how many fire departments do we have in this tiny region? And say, yeah, if you want to talk to us about consolidation, get your dedicated tax. They're at the limit of their taxes too. They have no place to go with taxes. So they would have to ask the legislature to go above that limit. And I don't like this in writing, even saying oppose, when we know nothing about it. And this is the problem with not having institutional history. We have said this. I remember going to a press conference and getting really booyah'd by Anjanette Damon saying, when are you going to do this? And I said, baby steps, Miss Damon, baby steps. So I don't like this being a part of our public record. And that's just the beginning of this. So this process is not working for me. And clearly nobody has the institutional history to advise and consent with that at that level. And I'm just not happy with this. I got this when I sat down. You asked me if I had questions. How would I have questions with something that I sat down to without being able to do my due diligence even this morning before I got here? So I don't even want to go any further. That bothers me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Burke Bigler.
Well, okay, you're on. I tend to agree somewhat with Commissioner Jung's concern that we're just saying oppose, when perhaps what we should say is what's on SB 25, oppose as written, and we'll work on an amendment. I think, because I agree that there's no, how are we going to, it's going to become the responsibility of the county to impose this tax. And if there's a cap on property taxes, and this bill, the way it's written, says property taxes, how are we going to do that? I mean, I don't understand how the county couldn't even do that. So I understand why staff would be saying, look, we need to oppose this as it's written. But just to put it on the public record as opposed, I think that probably is a point that needs to be considered, so.
So, Mr. Manager, perhaps what we can do is the layout of the document. Perhaps we can put staff recommendation and then what the board is recommending, so that we can go through these things, and staff has already said that they will get it to us earlier, and so it's an unfortunate circumstance, but I don't disagree. Commissioner Burke Bigler.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chair, one other thing I would put on for the record that I have had the opportunity, based on a list I received from my first meeting with the Health Board, that there were a number of bills, and I did take that opportunity to talk to Jamie Rodriguez about some of those, and I noticed that she's put some of those on this list that weren't originally proposing to be on the list because I had asked questions, so I appreciate that. And I do recognize that we have the opportunity to talk with Jamie on any of these issues at any time, so I appreciate that also. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Herman, any comments? Okay.
I also like the form, by the way.
We can make some changes to it, but yes,
For the record, I like the form.
we will make changes to it. Staff recommended,
And then that way we can go down and go down the list and look at them and
Right.
either support staff's recommendation or not. Okay? What else, Mr. Manager? Any other highlights?
Well, I would highlight, there are two E911 funding bills related
Okay.
to body cameras. One is SB 12, and that would allow an audit to make sure that it's being collected properly, making sure that all of the telecommunication companies are contributing fairly. That is, I believe, a NACO bill.
Yes.
And
We've
we would
talked
recommend
about that.
supporting that. The other is a bill that, again, SB 25 is noted. There are some concerns with it regarding reimbursement of staff time associated with body cameras. It needs to be tightened up as far as what that means, the type of training that's funded, who's funded, those sorts of things. We've had past experience with 911 funds related to dispatch, and we have some experience watching sort of the mushrooming of who is funded through those programs. So we are working on that one to perhaps tighten it up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Bigler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with that because what my concern about this is there's a limited amount of funds. And if we don't have the language very tight about what can be used, and this is actually a conversation Ms. Rodriguez and I had, what that money can be used for, we could very quickly run out of that money, and that would create a problem for us. So I do agree that that language needs to be tightened. Thank you for looking at that.
Okay, so this is going to be an ongoing item at every single meeting?
It will be.
Good.
It will be, and we'll tighten this up. We'll get the process running a little smoother. I wanted to highlight SB 36, I'm sorry, SB 13 at this point. And this is specifically a request from Clark County related to their experience with the October 1 incident, the shooting in Las Vegas. They were so overwhelmed with donations, and you may recall that then Commissioner Sisolak and the sheriff announced a fund to aid victims. They were so overwhelmed with that. Counties don't currently have the ability to in those situations, to create a nonprofit to help with those services.
And administrate those
And that's
funds.
what this would do, and we would suggest supporting that,
Okay.
that bill.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner
Doesn't
Jones.
that also, more than, I think we asked for this a few years ago, this is not a new bill. Doesn't that also allow us to create our own 501c3 to go fund ourselves when government doesn't have the funds that people need?
It's during emergencies, yes. Yeah.
Maybe
the
we
answer to
should
your
ask
question
for
is
the
yes.
extra. Can we ask for the extra? Like, can we create a nonprofit for a county that people can give donations to for senior services?
Outside of
Because we've had
emergency.
so much trouble taking donations from people, and then people tell my groups of volunteer neighborhood people, create your own 501c3. Do you know how much work that is, and money, and lawyers? Or go on somebody else's 501c3. I don't want to go on somebody, I don't want to commingle my money. And I know we use the community foundation all the time because we have no 501c3. So can we ask the legislature to, it doesn't matter what the event is, the emergency event might be we can't feed seniors. It might not be an active shooter, I hope. Can't we just have a 501c3 that we can create a GoFundMe or whatever you want to call it, that's not just limited to that type of disaster? It should be just, can you have a nonprofit that we can administer and, put the proper boundaries around? I see a lawyer back there shaking his head, so maybe we can't, but if it's another one of you, Mr. Liparelli, but let's ask for that. If we're going to ask for stuff, let's tell them what we need, and it's not, I don't want it to be an emergency that they consider the proper emergency to be a nonprofit. So I don't need advisor consent. Can we just look at that and tell me what the legalities are about that?
Certainly.
Thank you.
What I would say about this particular bill is the nonprofit that is created does become a public body, which entails all of the open meeting and open records requirements.
Okay. Okay.
Then the last one that I wanted to mention is AB 101, and I may defer to a legal counsel explanation on this. This authorizes private plaintiff to bring an action for declaratory judgment regarding violation of state law or local ordinance by government entities. And as you can see there in the recommendation would be to oppose that. I believe there's many other agencies that are reviewing this with a similar recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, just reviewed the bill today, haven't studied it in depth, but the concerns involve basically eliminating the concept of standing. When you authorize suit in this fashion, you basically authorize anyone to sue the government anytime for anything. And while, you know, that's kind of a romantic notion of watchdogging government action, the practical reality is a avalanche of lawsuits against local governments for anything and everything. And usually the way we test those claims is to force the plaintiff to demonstrate what the damage to them is before you can get into court and recover against the government. This bill would not require the plaintiff to demonstrate any damage, any personal effect, any impact from the alleged violation. It just allows a plaintiff to go down and file the lawsuit. And the only intervening force in the bill as written is allowing the Attorney General to intervene, but that doesn't do a local district or a local city or a county much good when its money is on the line, its reputation is on the line. It's not necessarily going to be the same priority for the Attorney General. So initially our recommendation is to oppose as written.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? All right. Manager.
The final bill that I wanted to point out is SB 103. And this was a result of the affordable housing study over the interim that Senator Ratty, I believe, had a major leadership role in. This would allow reducing or subsidizing impact fees for building permits on affordable housing after the commission Board of County Commissioners have a chance to review what that impact would have on county funding, county budget, and the enterprise funds involved. And staff would again recommend support on that particular bill.
Okay. Questions for staff, commissioners? Okay, is that all, Mr. Manager?
That's all. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but we will tighten this up. You will have this on Friday. The issue is that the pace of the legislature has already picked up and going forward. By the time we publish this, it may have changed, but we will just move forward with what we have before you for that week.
And one of the things I want staff to make sure that they're working closely with is our legislative representatives, so that we are familiar with these things. We are apprised as quickly as possible, because I know it's moving very, very fast. I saw Senator Ratty this morning, and that was one of the things that she mentioned was the lightning speed that things are moving. Always. That's not anything new. Any other comments, commissioners? Okay. Mr. Manager. Actually, I have no one signed in for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak?
We do on agenda item 19, no, sir.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Manager.
That would then take us to item.
Do we need to make a motion?
Not on 19.
Not on 19.
Mr. Chair, I think we have direction. I think particularly to AB4, we have direction on that item. It's move that from oppose to watch, work with the city of Reno and others who are working on that bill, perhaps to get to a location where we can have a different position besides watch.
I'd certainly like to see some language, just from my perspective.
And certainly change the format. I guess I would ask, if there's any of these in the first tier there where there was a recommendation, we've got AB4, but if there's anything that you see any of the others that the board does not agree with, would look for direction at this point.
Okay, I don't think there was.
Okay.
Commissioners? Commissioner Burke, Bigler.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Manager, I would be curious to see SB 103's percentage. So it says allows the reduction or subsidizing of impact fees. What percentage is there? Does it just across the board? In other words, does it allow any percentage to be reduced? Do you allows it to take it away completely, or is it saying we could reduce it by 10% or whatever?
Okay, we'll get you that information.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have direction.
All right,
Thank
let's
you.
move.
Item 20 is public comment. Comment or the item is limited to 3 minutes per person, may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Commission will also hear public comment on individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are being made to the commission as a whole.
Madam Clerk.
Ms. Tammy Holdstill?
Ms. Holdstill, welcome.
Tammy Holt-Still, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee for the record. Talking about 911, a week ago, there was a resident who ended up getting her car into the culvert on its side. Somebody called 911 a half hour before I got there with no response, because 911 didn't ask the right calls. I spoke with Sheriff Balaam on this and his staff, and they're working to find out why the calls went the way they went. But the woman was still in her car when I got there a half hour late, waiting to be extricated. She wasn't hurt, but she didn't think that anybody should try and go down a wet, muddy culvert to try and help her out and be leaning over. And she wasn't going to try and keep her car open to walk out. So this woman was in her car for a half hour in the cold, waiting for help. That goes back to services and infrastructure and the lack of communication between the city of Reno and Washoe County. It is time for a unity all the way across the board so that the residents aren't in danger. This is hazardous, it is dangerous, and it can cause problems down the road, major problems down the road. City of Reno, Washoe County have both been sitting on their duffs when it comes to Lemon Valley. And I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing about Lemon Valley, but live there. Come live in my house for a month. Let's see how well your nerves are, how you feel about the people that are sitting before me here that are sitting there saying, well, no offense, but I'm tired of hearing about it. Well, you know what? Until something is permanently done to fix the situation, it's going to be in your face until it is. It's in ours. My home went from being 10 feet out of a floodplain, or 10 feet away from a floodplain, to 2. Why is that? I asked FEMA. I've done my research. I know why. It's about time you guys learn to figure it out too. If I need my education, as somebody put it when I first started speaking, it's time for you to get an education also. It's time for you to be the experts up here too, so you can get staff to do what needs to be done. It is your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, Mr. Liparelli.
Chairman,
Do you need to speak under public
Yeah,
comment?
just a quick comment on public comment period. The county clerk has been getting a series of communications from a person outside the state of Nevada who wants to submit matters under public comment. And my advice to the clerk has been that the public comment period under the open meeting law is the opportunity for citizens to come down and address the county commission on any matter of any concern to that person. The open meeting law does not provide for a virtual equivalent of that or an electronic equivalent of that. So when the clerk gets these correspondence from this person, she's in a quandary about what to do with them. And my advice to her has been, it's merely correspondence to the commissioners. And unless the person comes down or sends an emissary down here to read a comment, it's not public comment. So again today, the clerk got one of these, and it's my advice to the clerk that she enter that email into the record of the meeting as a piece of material submitted to the county commission, but it's not a public comment, and it doesn't get the treatment of a public comment in my opinion, and as I've advised the clerk. So the clerk just wanted to make sure that she was doing the right thing, and I wanted the board to know that the clerk's very diligent about trying to make sure these things happen in the right way. And my advice is put it in the record, and it'll become a permanent part of the board's record for today's meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Manager, I think we're on item 21.
Item 21 are our Commissioner, County Manager's announcements.
Okay. Mr. Manager, do you have any such
I have
items?
none.
Commissioner Herman? No? Okay. Commissioner Burke, Bigler? Commissioner Jung?
I have two. I still haven't had staff get back to me for years now on a contracts administration advisory board. We just ran into another question about contracts. Why do we go with this vendor? Was this due diligence done? And I just think experts in contracts and vendoring should be overseeing the overseer of the people's money as to whom we are selecting and why these people are on certain, are identified as whom we will do business with and make decisions on things that we do here. The other thing is, can we look at, I want a full report on this Granicus software and the troubles that we've had every single meeting, and if they are fulfilling their contract, why we chose Granicus, what due diligence was done, how much was spent, how much are we continuing to spend, when is the contract aborted, or does it come to an end? Because this has been not a smooth sail. There should be no more bugs in a software package that we have had for so long that is supposed to make us more efficient and really has created, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of problems that I wouldn't be okay with if I bought this for my home in terms of its performance. So I would like a full report on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Okay. I have nothing else. With everyone's indulgence, we are adjourned. Thank you.